Hi, we are live on All Politics So Local, America's number one political hip hop talk show. And we are here with this is Monday, this is Friday, this is the third Friday in the month. And you know, if it's the third Friday in the month, you know it is the mayor's forum on All Politics So Local. And always an honor to have you here, Mayor Baraka. And Ed is not here tonight, he's with Kim and they're celebrating a wonderful birthday. So happy birthday, Kim, again for your birthday. And Zaid is on as well. Welcome, Mayor. Can you hear me?
I don't think you can hear you.
Hello, Mayor. Can you hear us?
I got you now, man. I'm having problems with this phone, man. That's the downside of using your phone on this thing, man. Got to go to a stable place. Yeah.
It all depends on the service. I remember when I
Yeah.
have Verizon, and I remember when Verizon was everything, and now everyone says it's T-Mobile that has no problems.
Right.
So,
All these people, they might be the same person.
fair, right. With all these companies, it used to be one company. They broke it up. You have no idea how they're trying to get it together again. So welcome, right, man? It's been a long time. I remember I've been traveling with the debate team for the last few months, and I'm home again today, and Zaid is here. How are things going, man?
Good, brother. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, in the state, country, but we keep pushing where we are. That's all we could do. We flew out flags at half staff, even though the president didn't want to do it.
Right.
Right.
Of course, for Jesse Jackson.
Right.
And
Yeah.
he meant a lot to all of us. We all grew up with him. We all grew up to him from, we are the age where we saw him on the electrical company and that we are somebody, right? That speech, those things, they're literally just a part of our growing up.
Him running for president is a part of our growing up twice.
That's a part of our adulthood, right? Like true,
I was a
because in
teenager.
'84, right?
Yeah, I was a teenager.
We were becoming into adulthood, right? We were in college and in middle school.
Yeah, I was like 17, 16, 17 years old, man.
Yeah.
Some of us are a little older than that.
Yeah.
You met Jesse Jackson. We could start with talking
a few times.
Jackson.
I met him a lot. Yeah, a few times. His kids, everybody, his wife, a few times. Yeah, I was at the convention. Me, him, and my father was writing a piece on him. I was traveling around with them then.
And that was a brilliant piece.
And you got a piece called "Ain't No Room."
And that's the thing, right? Like, because that was a piece that was cautiously critical of Jackson and at that time and what it might portend, right? Like, it seemed to be a piece that talked about him literally being on the outside of the convention, not being able to get in, but questions about who was in, who's in the room, and who's out of the room, and what does it mean?
Yeah, I think it really was. I really think it was a commentary on the party itself that still exists today, on Democratic Party itself that still exists today. Like, bringing all these votes to the Democratic Party, bringing all these people who wouldn't have been Democrats and, running for office, and they treat them like he the butler. Like, it ain't no room. That's really what it's about. It ain't no room for us, which is coming to a head because this dilemma, this struggle that they're having is going to define and measure what the party looks like, what the Democratic Party looks like in the future. Like now, from the present to the future, all this stuff that's happening, this upheaval, this strain and stress that's happening in the party is going to change. It's going to change either for the better or for the worse. I think it's at a crossroads.
And I think it's great that you started with that, right? Because it really is about, people don't understand that Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition became the Barack Obama coalition that pushed him in office. And that it
Sure.
was that promise of that Rainbow Coalition that kind of started the seeds of when he was like, you are somebody, like whoever you are, right? Like if you are
Well,
black, if you are brown, if you are
well,
Asian, right?
what the people don't know is that the leadership, the ground leadership, I mean, leadership that Jesse Jackson had, those African American women, moved on to the Obama folks, moved on to the Clinton and Kamala Harris. Whether you're talking about Aaliyah Dowdery, Reverend Dowdery's daughter, you talking about all of those folks that the head of the DNC at the time, you know, all of these folks, you know, came out of the Jesse camp, you
So
know,
what you're
and then
saying,
moved to the Baraka camp, Barack Obama camp. Yeah.
oh, that's interesting because like a lot of those people who were in the Jesse Jackson campaign and what you're talking about is just how they went from Jesse, then they went into the larger DNC because that was one of
Yeah.
the things that Jesse demanded. He was like, I have all these people and all these organizers, you are going to give them jobs.
Yeah, and they did a lot of work and still did a lot of work. I don't know about what they're feeling in their position is now after the betrayal of Kamala like that, but at the end of the day, those black women who worked with Jesse helped like facilitate Barack Obama's win, facilitate Joe Biden's win, right? And worked with Kamala as well. So those people they stood in there, and I think a lot of them are backing out of that stuff now. But the reality, whether you Cora Barry, all of those people, there's a whole crew of people, you know, that worked there. So
Can you name some
you
of
know,
the
he
people?
really set the
Name a few
stage
more
for
names.
a lot of this stuff, and people don't know it.
Can you name a few more of those names just for our listeners or some background on, because that's just really rich and a lot of people just don't know that. Like some of the people who worked for Jesse and then went to get into
Yeah,
Democratic politics.
so give me a second. When the names come to me, I'm getting to you. But it is like even when I went to the convention in Chicago, and a lot of those folks were still around.
You're going in and out
working
again.
with Kamala. I said even when I went to the convention in Chicago, a lot of those people were working, you know, to try to pull pieces together so they could make sure Kamala had a victory. Yeah, but when I think I always remember Leah Daugherty, her name is always on the top of my head because of Reverend Herbert Daugherty, you know, so Daugherty. So it is a nice little crew of them. And they had like a huge event in Chicago too, a Black women's event that my wife and I went to, which was crazy down there. And that's really, you know, the mobilization of Black women across this country for these presidential and these national candidates. The reason why Senator also Brooks won in Maryland, that same coalition of folks helped her.
And you talked about a betrayal in the Democratic Party, and I think this is a theme that goes back to that 1988 essay that talks about the Democratic Party getting Black votes and leaving people out, and what that means in the
Locally
long
too.
run.
Locally too, here too.
So talk to us about that. Talk to us
Do
about
the same
both on a
thing.
national and a local level. What does that mean about these votes?
Well, it means that we don't have a real strong independent push, and we need that, right? And I think that I put on my page, if you saw Jesse at the National Black Political Convention, his speech is like markedly different than what people would be saying today or what he was saying later. But it's clear, right? He said he didn't trust the leadership of the Democrat or the Republican Party in that speech. Jesse Jackson said that, you know. So the reality is these folks gain power and get authority and leave us out. When we don't have a organized, well-structured grassroots movement attached to that, right? As well as a kind of organized, you know, threat that we will go someplace else, then this is what happens. I mean, the reason that, you know, LBJ and the rest of them, King and them could get those civil rights bills done is because it was a huge movement happening at the same time in coalition and connection with one another. It wasn't like the movement and then King and them doing their thing. It was lockstep. And because it was lockstep, it was easy to strategize about what we were going to do and what we wanted, what we were going to do and what we wanted. I mean, everything wasn't perfect, obviously. And every black person in America wasn't running around waving the King flag or fighting for civil rights, but it was well orchestrated enough to get Voting Rights Act passed, to get Civil Rights Act passed and into law, right? Those things are important. When you don't have that, when you have like the grassroots or the activist community fighting with the elected community, and there's no like discussion of strategy, then we have what we have.
And are you talking about this right now on a local level, or are you talking about this on a national level?
All levels.
What does that mean? What does that mean on let's start with the national level and then let's go to the local level. What does that mean on a national level in terms of grassroots not connecting with politicians?
I mean, so we still today, like, you can see how this stuff is in retrograde now. We're fighting for a voting rights bill to be passed. We're fighting for the John Lewis voting rights bill to be passed. All these other things to be passed, and we can't get it done. We just can't get it done. There is no real collective pressure to make those things happen. And there's more elected officials, black elected officials today,
right, than
it was then. We just can't get none of that stuff done. We can't get we can't get an anti-lynching bill or none of those bills passed. We can't get none of that stuff passed nationally. It just can't. It just won't happen for us. And statewide, we have a supermajority in New Jersey of Democrats, and we still can't get stuff passed. We can't get a voting rights bill passed here. We can't get the Immigration Trust Act passed for immigrants. You can't get none of these bills passed that are for black and brown and working people, and Democrats are in control. We can't get it passed because there is no collective movement on the ground that is working collectively or orchestrating or choreographing, I should say that, and the political pressure at the same time is just not. Everybody's not in step. There's not even real communication, for that matter.
And you're saying not even the ways that you would fight in public but work in private, right? Like, or that people would, you have their public disagreements, but you have an agenda or strategy where this is what we need. Ultimately, this is the bills that we need passed. I know particularly there's the CCRB law, right? We wanted a strong CCRB that was from the last administration into now, and you wanted one that had strong subpoena power. That was one of the things that was like incredibly important in terms of police reform. Is that something that is still being pushed? Is that is that in the area that you're talking
about? Senator, that bill is still there, waiting in committee. All of that stuff, whether it's the reparations stuff or that bill or any other bill, we just don't. We have to have a correlating grassroots strategy of protest, of organizing, of showing up, of doing that, connected to a elected legal strategy. All of that has to be lockstep with one another, or else you don't get this stuff done.
Now,
at this point, people are used to folks coming to Trenton, protesting, doing this and doing that. It has to be a collective kind of thing has to happen here.
That's what you tried to do, or it seems like that's what you tried to do when you ran for governor. I know you just popped out. He'll pop back in with it's having problems with his phone. But yeah, like that was interesting when he talked about 1988 and the Jesse Jackson's presidential campaign. One of the things that Jesse always did is he always was forcing institutions to have more people and representation. If you were the Democratic Party, he said, here are all the people that you have to hire. If you were a Coca-Cola, if you were corporations, he would say, you have to have more Black representation within your ranks. I think that Jesse Jackson and what he did literally created the space for what became known as DEI, or at least those considerations, because he's like, we have to be concluded and you have to have some representation. And the multiracial, multicultural, inclusive vision of America is one that he put to poetry with You Are Somebody, with that speech to those little kids. And the way in which he developed from there to a rainbow coalition that became, I think, the basis for the Barack Obama coalition that was in 2008, when you had the demographic numbers to actually back up the political strength numbers. What do you think about the conversation so far, Zaid, when especially the part about elected officials, community not being even on a strategic accord? We're not talking about agreeing in public. We're talking about not even being in a strategic accord. You represent grassroots a lot. You represent street and grassroots a lot. What do you think about that characterization, especially because you are, I mean, you're a community organizer, man. You are always organizing.
Well, several things. First, I think Jesse's heyday, prime years, when he was really prime in our consciousness and making his impact, was between, well, I'm going to use the two events and give or take a few years either way. The 72 Gary Convention, of course, we try to do a 50th anniversary on that. And his 88 run for presidency, right? And in that, he definitely had the kind of impact that you're talking about. He definitely did, and he deserves credit for that. Now, of course, I have now with me with Panther Roots. The original Rainbow Coalition was something else, right? But
and talk about that in its context, because what Jesse did, and when he was talking about We Are Somebody, that's directly from you're referring to Fred Hampton, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so break that down, because I think that is not, there's a lineage, right? I think that conversation was going on in the Black Panther Party.
Chicago lineage, right? And we should say at the end of the hour, we're going to have another conversation. We're going to have a roundtable on Jesse Jackson with Lawrence Hamm, who was a delegate for Jackson, who ran the New Jersey chapter of the Rainbow Coalition. We were all in that together. Junius Williams, who was Jesse's attorney when Jesse was trying to get stuff done here in Jersey.
Oh, we got Junius on tonight?
Junius on, yes.
Oh, nice. Okay.
We got Kamm Howard, who's better known for his work around reparations, but the man who set him off was Jesse Jackson. Kamm is right there. He's a child of Chicago, right? So in Chicago, we have the emergence of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, which turned out to be the largest chapter in the whole party's national apparatus. And Chairman Fred Hampton called for a rainbow coalition of the most nationally oppressed and weakest or poorest segments of society. And that would mean the young lords who left, the street organization kind of thing and became a revolutionary party representing the Puerto Rican people, the Brown Berets, right, for our Chicano folks out of the West Coast and the Southwest, right? The Appalachian folks who some of whom were able to put their racist baggage down and pick up the question of class struggle, and became a part of that coalition. And that had a particular strategic revolutionary character and intent. Jesse modifies that to make it fit into a broader social paradigm, like you were describing. It came from somewhere, and he modified it so it can go into some other places. And all of those places were important. And of course, he had his own roots in terms of what those ideas meant coming up on the shoulders of Dr. King and the leadership of the civil rights movement. The beloved community the other underpinning of his notion of a rainbow coalition and the kind of country that folks say they want, that is anti-racist, anti-sexist, and anti-imperialist, and anti-fascist, right? So he definitely had his moment. You're muted, Jonathan. I know you're trying to tell me something. But
yeah. I wanted to have you break down what you said was that difference, that nuance, that evolution, or not even evolution, that different spin that Jesse put on it. I think maybe what you were saying is that when Fred Hampton was talking about his rainbow coalition, when he got poor white people and middle class black people and Latinos, and he got everybody together in Chicago, and that was that rainbow coalition, that was about profound class struggle. It was about something that would be revolutionary in terms of undermining the most detrimental parts of capitalism, of militarism, and calling it out very specifically, very radically, right? But calling it out in a way that was relatable to poor white people, to middle class black people. So it was all of that, but it was to push a revolutionary message, right? That these systems have to be overthrown. These systems, you need to shift that taxes, do the things you need to do to redistribute wealth in ways that need to be massively redistributed. Whereas Jesse, it seemed like the spin that you're talking about wasn't so much about the redistribution of wealth, right? As it was integration into the larger structures of society. Now, I could be wrong about that because Jesse also talked about universal health care. Jesse talked about certain things that would be
civil rights bill
that came out of the civil rights bill. I mean, the civil rights tradition of calling for it, right? So maybe part of what our generation's criticism was of Jackson and growing up is that we saw the corporate stuff. We saw the corporate inclusion and we felt like great, but we didn't know where, we saw it as helping middle class black people get jobs within corporate America. We saw it as good for a certain segment of our population, but as ignoring people who are at the bottom. And I don't know if that's fair, right? I think that might actually even be unfair in retrospect.
Yeah.
Those were the conversations.
I'm not going to be harsh.
Right. But those were the conversations that we had back then, right?
Yeah,
terms of those were the common criticisms.
And why I'm modifying, that take is this, because underneath that were unprecedented opportunities for those of us at the bottom rungs of society to go to school.
Right.
Right. And you don't have a meaningful inclusion floor without, providing ladders for people to climb to be a part of the conversation. And developing opportunities to go to school was real. I didn't, I wouldn't have been able to go to school. I'm making it plain. I ain't that smart, right? If it wasn't for those kinds of inclusive programs that were a part of the continuity of our struggle and those broad-ranging social demands that we met at that time. But the other thing too, I want folks to appreciate about Jesse too, and I'm again using these to beach these two bookends, 72 and 88, is that the politics that drove the 72 convention was the politics of the United Front. Okay. And in 88, well, between 84 and 88, we not only see the emergence of Jesse Jackson in Chicago, we see the reemergence of somebody else in Chicago by the name of Louis Farrakhan.
Right.
And there was a relationship that built on just what was the beginning of a conversation. And we're just a few days away from the 60th anniversary of Elijah Muhammad hosting Martin Luther King in his home in Chicago when Martin moved to Chicago. back in 66, right? So, and that was a big deal because it actually brought a lot of folks who traditionally, out of us, diehard nationalist background, didn't give a damn about voting, right? But because of this relationship becoming center stage, not just in our community, but for the entire country and the world, we started looking at whether or not we should get involved in that way. And a lot of us did as a consequence. And most of us who did continued to stay involved in terms of ballot participation. Whereas, prior to that, we ain't in none of that. That ain't for us, right? So, he was important to that. They were important to that. That was a high point in that. And also,
I just want to add to something that you were talking about, right? On the inclusion part and on the class uplift part. I think that part has always been understated because part of the push in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s was to get more Black people into higher education and to get more Black people with access to that education. And so there are so many of us who owe our whole career, all the Gen Xers. We all owe our whole, both our higher education.
The boomers too. That's where I'm at. I'm in the back end of the boomers. Yeah.
We owe our higher education, and we owe many of the jobs that we had, whether we are in education, anything that we are doing that required a degree, we owe that absolutely to all that work that was done in the late 60s and 70s, and the work that Jesse pushed in inclusion. Because when the actual push for the legislation ended in the late 60s, there was the push for stopping the de facto discrimination, right? The discrimination that happens if everything just still stays the same, because the attitudes have not changed. So all of that is there too. And so I just wanted to put that in there. And when you're talking about that part of the legacy, to add that part of the inclusion that we all have to be grateful for. So you were talking about the voting aspect of it in terms of voting and policies. Talk to me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, some of us who come from backgrounds where we didn't give a damn about the vote necessarily. Certainly not on the national stage, maybe on the local stage a little bit, but certainly not on the national stage because we just didn't trust none of it. And we had a very different orientation to, pool our own resources, do our own businesses, to build our own institutions and do our own work. We'll never be able to get along with those folks in peace. So we're not going to even try. We got other things to do, right? That marked the shift. And Malcolm would anticipate in the shift earlier, of course, with his Ballad of the Bullet, right? And pushing the United Front strategy even when he was in the Nation of Islam, right? But it really came to a head with Jesse and Farrakhan emerging, on the stage at the same time.
Oh, right? That 1984, right?
Between 84 and 88. It all came to that time, because Farrakhan really began to reassemble the nation as he knows it, right? And that really began to develop its own legs. And, he's charismatic as anybody is and has been. You have these two charismatic figures coming from two very different worlds, very different schools of thought in terms of how people should take care of themselves, finding common ground and challenging our people to build and to be possessive of the common ground that we ought to find, right? So that was an important moment.
I love that you put that.
This is where I was going, and I don't want people to miss, right? And I hope we get him back because this is his hour. Is that Jesse also had an international sense of human solidarity that was huge, right? Jesse, could talk to Fidel unapologetically. Jesse could talk to Yasser Arafat unapologetically.
And did.
Absolutely. Jesse represented the part of the civil rights wing that joined us in the nationalist community in the Black student community in the anti-apartheid front, right?
Right.
Jesse was doing all those. Jesse did diplomatic missions that top-rate elected officials couldn't and wouldn't do.
That's true.
He did some incredible things as a beacon of international human solidarity that I think is really big. And pardon my cough, I'm dealing with something, right?
Yeah, me too, right?
Oh man, that really I think cements the importance and the virtue of his legacy.
He was an international figure who had the ability to independently move, like when Saddam Hussein had American hostages in that first Gulf War. Jesse Jackson literally went over and was able to get some of the hostages. And
so did a guy
family story.
Ali, as quiet as it's kept.
And you said what?
So did a guy named Muhammad Ali, as quiet as it's kept.
Right, and Muhammad Ali as well. That wasn't quiet, right? Back in the day, we knew Muhammad Ali went over, we knew Jesse Jackson went over, and it's interesting because when Jesse went over, I have a family story about that. My uncle worked in Kuwait during that time and was actually held hostage during that time, right? And so the Iraqis got them together because they were like, "Oh, Jesse Jackson's coming over. He's definitely going to ask about you, right?" And so, because he's a brother, right? Like your brother, Jesse Jackson's going to come over. And so they got him. They brought him to the hotel. He thought he was going home, but Jesse apparently, like whoever was giving Jesse the information, didn't give him the information about my uncle. Oh. And so they were like, "Yo, you going back?" It was like, "What, Jesse? No, nah, man, he ain't come for you, man. He ain't come for you." And
I never heard.
It was like, "Oh man, right?" Now, of course, of course, it was a State Department thing, right? Like in terms of, I'm sure the State Department gave him a list of people they wanted back, and he didn't get to see all of them and pick who he wanted, right? But that was just how that spun out. So that was that personal family Jesse story about what he did as an international diplomat, being able to.
So how did that play out? Though? You got to tell the story though.
Well, eventually, so he went back to wherever they were keeping him for a few weeks or months or whatever happened from there to the time when fighting broke out. When fighting broke out, I believe they released the rest of the hostages right before fighting broke out, and he was released in that wave. So he was released basically with everybody else at the end, and found his way back to the United States.
His way back. What did he do after that? How did he continue on with his life? What did he do?
He's a math teacher. He worked in Newark Public School District for a while as a math teacher. He's a brilliant mathemaician. And he's like 92, 93 years old right now.
Wow.
And living his best life right now. But I call him, I always say that he is a shout out to Uncle Clem. He was a Vietnam veteran, did multiple tours in Vietnam. Came out, got his doctorate in math. He's Dr. Clemmy Hall, and he was teaching all over the world. Happened to be teaching in Kuwait, making money over there, and really just teaching them whatever they needed for those, because they're using their money to develop their people. And my uncle was part of that, right? The human infrastructure. My uncle was a part of that, so he came back. Taught math, taught in Newark for a while, retired again. So he retired from the military, retired from Newark public schools, and living his best life in Atlanta now at the nice old age of 92.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So big shout out to Uncle Clem.
Uncle, right on.
But yeah, so when you're talking about
wonderful diversion, I had to take you there.
No, that's great. That's fine. You're like, what happened? Doesn't make sense. But so. It's funny because someone said it's better to call him Reverend Jackson, and it's true. And out of our generation, he was always so everywhere. With love and affection, we know him as Jesse, right? Like that's a term of love and how we talk to each other, right? And of course, when we meet him, Reverend Jackson, of course, Reverend Mr. Jackson, of course. But it's just how much he was a part of our generation growing up and part of our part of our social development from Sesame Street, part of our political development. I think it might have been one of the first political campaigns I volunteered for.
Only missed
Like,
that.
like I canvassed for him when I was in college, and in his '88 campaign, right? So he's one of the first. So when we're looking at how we get involved in politics, I think a lot of people became involved in politics in terms of the grassroots,
Right.
door to door. I will get involved in a presidential campaign type politics
Yeah, absolutely.
through Jesse Jackson. So when
That's part
the
of
mayor
what
brings that up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So the mayor's bringing that up about all the people who were a part of his campaign that went to other campaigns after that and became part of the DNC after that. I think that that's really a great observation to make on that.
In fact, to bring it even more local, and then he's not I want him to be, and he would remember it. You know, one of the things that I try to do personally as an organizer, and this is in the '90s now, as a young Ras Baraka begins his own runs for office, right? Is that I also try to. He got into a runoff. It's either '94 or '98. I can't remember which year. He got into a runoff for city council.
98.
Yeah, thank you. Right, and I made a personal overture to Nation of Islam leadership in the area. You know, let's see if they would, consider. I don't know if they had not taken a position on the election, or whether or not they were willing to do that. But to consider that, based on what had gone on and that had been developed between Minister Farrakhan and Jesse, and that whole notion of getting folks involved that who are not ordinarily involved in doing that, and they were responsive, and of course, the mayor has redeveloped his own relationship with the Nation of Islam under Minister Farrakhan on his own terms since then, But it's that all those bookend moments were really, really, really telling in terms of his legacy, and I think those of us old enough to remember them should certainly appreciate them. Those of us, and for the young heads behind us, that's something for them to study and appreciate, because the country was, even after the 60s, the country was shifting to the right, but he represented a kind of, and I'm gonna just call it a democratic optimism, right? That transcended all the negative stuff that was still happening, right? He always offered a sense of what was possible, what ought to be, what can be, right? Even if as the negative stuff was undermining the very things he was doing, So he had his own unique impact and presence in that way. Not to be totally uncritical of him, I had wished I think he also missed a moment.
Okay, what was that?
I'm saying this with my own passion and not any disrespect for his legacy at all, but what we built with the Rainbow Coalition in '88 could have been one of two things: the beginning of a real third party force in this country, or a defined, sharp left-wing presence within the Democratic Party, right? He did not recognize, in my modest judgment. Some of us were in the room with him downtown Newark, Robert Treat Hotel, after some big thing we did. And, we were asking that question, next, how you see this thing going next? You got a ball in your court. How you want to play this? And he went into a very different, nebulous place about, maybe we need to be free agents and whatnot. I'm like, And that was a missed moment for what could have come from that mobilization. And if it had gone either of those two ways that I'm talking about, I think, our national conversation would look even more different than it's just beginning to look with the emergence of a DSA kind of presence in the electoral arena that you're seeing people like AOC and Zoran Mandami, right? But now, and having said that, where the first showed up as a consequence is that right behind him, somebody named Bill Clinton came in with a party within the Democratic Party on the right called the Democratic Leadership Council that took the Democratic Party to the right. And for all of the facade around Bill Clinton being the super friend of the black man and the black woman, that came with it Bill Clinton, the prison builder. All of the stuff, all of his baggage was in full care. And that was him pushing the Democratic Party to the right, trying to reclaim the presence and the centrality of the white male.
And actually, the moment where Bill Clinton did that was in the Breakfast with Sister Soldier, where Jesse Jackson was actually there in '92, where he basically attacked Sister Soldier at a breakfast so that he could prove his bona fides to more conservative white people.
And all those black folks left her hanging.
Right.
And that's why she stepped away from what she was doing at that point in her life, because she no longer felt safe amongst her own people as a consequence of that. I did some work with Sister Soldier. I adored that little sister, right?
Right.
I remember when she was Lisa Williamson, before she even became Sister Soldier.
Exactly.
When that was bubbling, right? And it's a shame that, her voice, was lost from that for a moment. That she reimagined herself in another way and became the queen mother of the hip hop novel, with the stuff. And she's an incredible novelist, right? But that was real. Then there's another situation
coldest winter ever.
To that I got to add to that, and I'm glad you lifted that up. When civil rights leaders, and particularly the survivors of SNCC, had a national conversation, right? That included people like Kwame and Imam Jamil El-Amin, right? Kwame was very sick at this point now. He was fighting prostate cancer that would ultimately claim his life. And Imam Jamil was really reemerging as an organized force amongst Muslim folks in Southwest Atlanta. And, Clinton attacked that. Right? As if he was the ultimate arbiter of what can and cannot be talked about amongst our people. Right? He X'd that out in his attack on that conversation when he was in it. Right. And it's not, I don't think it was accidental at all that a few years later, Imam Jamil will find himself being targeted by the state again. Mm-hmm. And we ultimately lost him just a few months ago, in the clutches of the state, but having said all that, because that's kind of a tangent, but I wanted to just put a pin on,
but it's a tangent that
we could have built on.
But it's the tangent that is very similar to the one that, we were talking about before. Within middle-class Black political structures and circles, there's a class conversation to be had. Right? Most of the people who create the policies are solidly middle class. And the question becomes, do we, like the policies that are from universal health care to living wage to many of the major class redistribution things that right now are seen in AOC or Bernie Sanders and the Democratic Socialists. Those all come from the civil rights movement, like very well, right? Like a lot of those demands are the demands that go back to King. When Mamdani is talking, often he evokes the community aspect, the more socialist aspect of King. And do we lose that in our Black democratic politics, right? Like, is that something when we look at the Congressional Black Caucus?
Up for sale, that's what happened.
You said what? What did you say?
If you want them black Democrats up for sale, it can happen. And that's what has been happening. And in
Explain.
fact,
break this down.
Let's go back to the Gary Convention. That was the point of division, right? The class question and driven by the question of whether or not our people should engage in Palestinian solidarity. Okay? It was a divisive issue, right? You have folks that walked out because they felt like they shouldn't. And behind that was an affluent Zionist philanthropic arm that began to feed that line that did not want that conversation to happen. And now, if you look at this monstrosity called AIPAC, the bridge to inclusion in the broader social and electoral process in this country that was the black community, that bridge has been closed off by all of those black Democrats who are beholden to AIPAC.
Okay, explain that. Break that down.
I've said that before. That is ultimately what cost Kamala Harris that election.
Break that down. Talk to us.
AIPAC, and I forget what the whole acronym means, but it's an Israeli lobbying arm that has spent a lot of money doing what it can to control the influence of black Democrats nationally and locally, and they put a big stranglehold on the CBC itself, right? That has really muffled that particular voice in our community that used to be very, very open, right? And it's, we should be in a different place with that. But that's, if you want to see why, certain folks are not talking about what's going on in Gaza and all that money that has been given to Israel to do all that bombing and all of that stuff, right? It's because there's money that had been given to these folks not to do that.
And so this is part of a longer conversation. And what you're saying is that there has been a break between black politicians that actually represent these interests that were true to the civil rights movement, right? Like these class interests were part and parcel of the civil rights movement. Like that was the legacy of King.
Yeah.
And you're saying that what is the connection between supporting Israel and, like with weapons, et cetera, in the way that AIPAC would want, and not being true to class interest, right? Like if we're looking at some of the founders of Israel, they were socialists, right? Like so what's the question with that? Like what's the more of the nuance of why you say what you say? Now clearly there are lots of mainstream articles that talk about it. There were 2 congressional candidates that were knocked out of power based on their stances against Israel, and AIPAC was important to that. And even when we look at the congressional 11th district that just happened a few weeks ago, AIPAC played a role in that, but in the opposite way, right? Like they ended up, and it's become right now, it's a talking point, right? Like I think for the first time, taking AIPAC money may cost you an election as opposed to help you in an election. And that would be something that would be brand new. But continue talking about what you're talking about.
Here's where I'm going. And I want folks to appreciate this too, right? Because we went through a long argument and struggle around the apartheid question. The way the United States invested in apartheid, the way the United States would use Israel to get around being exposed in investing in apartheid. Okay, those are things that we hit on hard, but it took years for that multinational, intergenerational movement, in spite of its mass character, to actually turn the corner within the conversation for something to happen, right? I don't know how long it's going to take here, and I hope it doesn't take much longer, because a lot of people's lives are being lost and their land is being taken right in front of everybody's eyes. We can ready to have a conversation around Leqaa Kordia in a little while, right? And that's a local story about how that's playing out. But this monster coming up with his board of peace, and it was able to buy off 50 countries to sign on to his board of peace to turn Gaza into a goddamn millionaire playground. That ain't gonna be for the Palestinian people. Meanwhile, on the West Bank, Israeli settlers are literally going around killing people on top of what's already all the destruction that is taking place in Gaza, right? So I'm hoping this young, fresh, bold, unapologetic movement for Palestinian solidarity in a very similar makeup to what we had around apartheid some years ago turns the corner sooner than later. Time will tell, because underneath all of that is this elephant in the room called white male privilege and racism, right? Israel and America are the last bastions of settler colonialism, the most violent forms of colonialism and racism. And they're basically trying to carve out a world where what they say goes and nothing else matters.
So when you're talking about like what happened with Cori Bush a couple of years ago, or Jamal Bowman a couple of years ago, I know that there were a lot of stories running around about AIPAC was targeting specifically Black members of the delegation and knocked them out, and it did. And you know, Cori Bush ended up losing, and so did Jamal Bowman. And both of the they were both very grassroots, very feeling very connected, and connected to the civil rights era that we were talking about in terms of being much more class conscious, being much more about the redistribution of wealth, being a lot more progressive in the lines of socialist progressive, and the people they were placed with seeming to be more of not as progressive, much more of a status quo when it comes to class within the United States, and much more friendly to interests that are much more friendly to a wealthy donor billionaire class. How does that play into, let's bring this back to what the mayor was talking about earlier, when he's basically talking about the break between the grassroots and politicians, and how there needs to be on the same page for a progressive agenda. What is your take on that? Because I think that is dealing with a similar but subtly different question. Well, how do you strategically prepare in a time like now?
You got to be principled. You know, if you against racism, you fought solidarity. You got to be principled about that. You know, you got to be principled. You know, if you're being bought off, you know that's going to compromise the degree to which you can be principled. It's got to be a principled conversation. You know, we represented. That was one of the things that our people were respected for globally when our movement blew up, was how principled our movement was.
Which is why Jackson was able to talk to Yasser Arafat, because he's on the right side right here.
He represents the principle dimension of our struggle.
There's a principle of sovereignty and self-determination.
All of that.
How they deserve sovereignty and self-determination. And those are consistent principles. Those aren't principles that go away because we are allies with the people that they're fighting against, right? Like the principles of solidarity in South Africa, because it's like, look, well, apartheid is wrong, and just because the white South African government works well with the United States does not mean that we cannot call them out in no uncertain terms for having an apartheid government that is there, right? Like, so it's the ability to speak consistently to things. You're saying that's, in your opinion, this inability to speak consistently, you have said it is what cost Harris the race. Oh, why did you say that?
I think that's one reason. Of course, the other reason is that white folks voted for Trump, and there are more white folks who are about that kind of backwardness than America is willing to deal with. Now, I appreciate And I want to have some faith in the white folks that resist that, like what we see in Minneapolis, right? I was very proud of that resistance and that solidarity that we see in people like the Renee Goods and the Alex Prettys in Minneapolis, but that is not the order of the day.
Right.
Trump won the majority of white folks who voted.
And would win them today. And would win them today.
That Trump is trying to, hijack the 26 elections. Whether he does it with this SAVE Act, whether he does it with bringing ICE folks to the polls, all this stuff he's talked about, or confiscating ballot boxes, right? All this stuff is in the mix because he put it in the mix. He put it in the mix, and too many of these folks across class lines amongst your white American friends, quiet about it.
And Public Square Amplified pointed out that Harris got more votes than Biden, which is true, right? Harris did get more votes than Biden, and still lost because Trump, even like the people who supported Trump, there were just more of them came out, and that those are some long, hard conversations because he, by many things that I've read, he actually got fewer white votes, and he got more in the swing states, in certain swing states that pushed him over, like in Pennsylvania and in Michigan, got more of the Latino votes, fewer of the white votes, but enough to push him way over. And other places like Georgia, like just overwhelmed with white votes, right? Like they're like overwhelming. Like in Georgia, she got more votes than Biden in Georgia. She got more votes than Biden in Georgia, but she only got 28% of the white vote. So in certain states that just wasn't the case. In certain states, just white people whited, right? They just white people just whited, and it was just like, oh my goodness, like there was no way to overcome 28% of the white vote in Georgia. Right.
Crazy man in the White House, absolutely.
Right. Right. So that becomes a very complicated push.
Let me bring it back to Malcolm because he's right over my shoulder, right? And they do it this way, right? The anti-racism that blew up in the George Floyd summer, and it's blowing up in its own way around ICE, right? Coming from white folks, it's good stuff. It's a beginning. It's important. It was larger than we've seen since the civil rights era. In the George Floyd summer, in places like Minneapolis and Portland, okay, who are big white cities who protested against that violence, right? But that needs to become the order of the day. Now, what would to that is that the key to undoing racism is to educate people out of their racism. And so it's no accident that these crazy folks with this MAGA madness, one of their first order of business, listen to me, Black History Month people, right, is to remove and make it impossible for our history to be meaningfully taught, right? Because we have that, and everybody's getting that history. And, we're in Jersey. Jersey's got the Amistad Bill and an Amistad Commission, which was supposed to mandate everybody being educated about their racism, right? But there's no enforcement to that, right? That is the key ultimately to doing that. And when these crazy white folks saw their nephews and nieces marching with Black and brown men and women in these streets, shutting down highways and carrying on and whatnot, led by young Black women, that drove them absolutely crazy. Drove them crazy, right? But in the end, that is, the African sense of time is past, present, future, right? That was a present, future looking at time, because them young folks, if they keep coming, they're going to represent the change of the day. And of course, the hip hop answer underneath all of that is the fear of the Black planet. It's coming.
Right.
It's coming. We just
And
got to figure out how to make sure that there's some real level, democratic playing field when it comes, and that we're not eliminated as casualties along the way. We need to be real clear about the need to be that strategic.
Well, there's a good segue when you're talking about history, because it's 7 o'clock, and we know that we have a packed show tonight, and we know that at 7 o'clock we're having John Brinkley of Plainfield Frontier International on their Black History Month program, and it's also going to feature Bill Davis on the Black aesthetic. We at 7:45, you can introduce. We're having Hamza Abushaban,
Yeah.
the cousin of Paterson-based activist.
Yeah.
Leqaa Kordia, and who's being detained in Texas right now, and he talks about her struggle for freedom. At 8:15, we're going to be remembering the late Jesse Jackson with Lawrence Hamm and attorney Junius Williams and the reparations champion Kamm Howard. And of course, ending off our show, we're going to have DJ Rhino and the State of Hip Hop. We didn't go do the rundown at first, so I just want to do that right now as we jump into the next segment of the show.
Now, this is, I get very personal about all of the segments that I curate, but this one, when it comes to my hometown, I get very possessive. Right?
Yes. Must be talking about Plainfield again, right?
Yeah, Plainfield's Frontier International, right? Now in its 50th year. Is that right, John Brinkley?
Its 50th year of having the Martin Luther King breakfast, but it was founded in 61. So it's a little older than, for 50 years of the Martin Luther King breakfast, which started even before it became an official holiday.
Wow. Well, let's take a step back for folks who are not from Plainfield, right? Plainfield's not a big town, so there's a whole lot of us ain't from Plainfield, right? But it's a fighting town, and I love the hell out of it, right? Sean, why don't you reintroduce everybody to Frontiers International, and then let's talk about what you have coming up, what you've done, why Frontiers is important, and what you have coming up, and bring Bill into this conversation, because Bill is going to do a hell of a talk that we're all looking forward to next week.
Okay, thanks, Brother Zaid. The Frontiers, as I was saying, was founded in 1961 by a number of brothers, including Westry Horn, who was a Morehouse graduate and who did a lot here in Plainfield, and that's why we name our lecture series after him. Frontiers International is the oldest community service club in the U.S. It was founded in Columbus, Ohio in 1936. Here in Plainfield, we started the lecture series back in about 2015. We did this because we felt it was important, in the words of Dr. Jeffries, we felt it was a communiversity. In other words, you bring the education to the community, and you educate them about topics that are important to them. So we started in the various schools, Clinton School, Washington School, with in-person presentations. And then after COVID, we became virtual. So people can go on to either Facebook or YouTube and put in Plainfield Frontiers and see some of our previous lectures. One of which last year, Saeed, as you know, was Malcolm's 100th anniversary of his birth. And we had you do a presentation. We've had a number of people do presentations on Marcus Garvey. We've done things on Sojourner Truth and a number of historical figures. We've had a number of prominent guests, including Gil Noble, Dr. Jeffries, Ivan Van Sertima, who wrote the book that came before Columbus. And so we felt it was important to, among the other things that we do, we have our Junior Frontiers and so on. They've went over to Africa, to Ghana. They went over to Kenya, and with other frontier chapters. But to service the people of Plainfield, we felt to have our Communiversity Western Horn lecture series was an ongoing thing that we felt is important. So this up and coming one will be February 28th, the last day of the month. And we have Professor Bill Davis, who will be speaking on the power of the Black aesthetic. And I was hoping that Bill would give us a highlight, just to tease folks a little bit, not give them everything. Want them to tune in on Saturday the 28th from 2 to 4. Just go to YouTube or Facebook and put in Plainfield Frontiers. Then you'll come right to that live broadcast. So, Bill, you want to give a little highlight?
Well, before we do that, hold on, Bill, because I want folks to appreciate who the great Bill Davis is, right? Bill Davis is not just a son of Plainfield, a progressive organizer and educator, but Bill gave us, I'm going to call it a pioneeringly important book, dealing with his own life, his own family life, and the struggles of being a Black male father. Black male father in this country, and in his situation, his family went through an ordeal with the real medical challenges of the Black mother of his children, and that's uniquely poignant, moving, sensitive conversation, that kind of conversations that Black men need to be able to have. Because still, in our best iterations, and I know I wasn't hardly the best of Black fathers myself, right? We need those of us who understand the depth of that kind of conversation, need to appreciate it and need to make ourselves available for those spaces, or to create those spaces where we can have this. I got to get it. Baba and the Crew was a book that I want everybody to get. We spotlighted at a Source of Knowledge bookstore, and it's a great gift for any Black man in your family, wherever he is in his own station of life. It's a valuable conversation that we need to have, and I really appreciate Bill for having done that. Now, Bill, you can take your orders from John.
Bill knows how to roll, so Bill, do your thing, man.
Well, I appreciate the kind words from both of you brothers. It's an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to have this conversation, to participate in this conversation. And so, since all of us have deep connections to Plainfield, and I guess I should say this now as opposed to at the end, that the Plainfield boys basketball team is still making moves out here.
Well, I'm an ex-middleweight, so I couldn't dribble, so I just punched the hell out. But that's right. They got a good team this year.
Playing the ball for the Union County Championship, and then next week is the first round of the state playoffs.
Yes,
so,
sir.
It's amazing to go to those games, man. There's so many people from the community that come out to support these young brothers. And so as we think about how we want to raise issues and educate people, I think that when we're in settings where the community is present, we have an opportunity to engage and interact and for that, however brief moment, to drop some information in that might be useful. And so hopefully, probably Tuesday, I'm going to try to get to the game on Tuesday. And then I can encourage people, to tune in on Saturday. And so Zaid, when we were speaking earlier, and for those people, I guess, that don't know, Zaid was the cultural chairperson for the Black Panther Party back in the day. And so when we think about culture and the role that it plays as far as helping to awaken a certain element of our revolutionary and spirit to be able to demand and work for justice, then in my class, I used to do a section on the Black aesthetic, primarily because of the fact that all throughout our history, it's always been really present. But in recent history, there was a study done that said that every 2 to 3 minutes, somebody is looking at their cell phone. And so when we think about the role that technology has played, we think about the role that culture has played, then understanding the genesis of the culture, understanding how in ancient Africa, not only were things aesthetically beautiful, but they would serve a particular purpose. And so that's what I started with. I would start with ancient Africa. I would start with Kemet, what we commonly call Egypt, show some of the magnificent things that our ancestors built thousands of years ago. Even most people don't know that the pyramids were actually a site for pharaohs to be buried. And so for me, and I just want to add one more point on that. So we celebrate King Tut primarily because his was one of the few tombs that was actually found intact. And when they found King Tut's tomb intact, there were over 3,000 gold items in the tomb. He had only been a pharaoh for 7 years. And so the Kemetic philosophy was that from the time he became a pharaoh, then they started building your tomb. Their philosophy about life after death. So when they were buried with all of the things they thought they would need in the afterlife. And so, but King Tut's tomb had not been raided as the other tombs had been. So when they found all these gold items in there, a gold casket inside of another gold casket. I mean, it was incredible what our ancestors were doing. So I start there to help whoever's listening to recognize the fact that for thousands of years, we have had a very profound culture. We have developed all different kind of things, whether it's on the aesthetic side, on the medical side, birthing chairs, the accomplishments are incredible. And then I worked my way up. I worked my way up through the songs that our ancestors sang when we were in captivity, and how that, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot was really a song that helped our ancestors know we get ready to run away, that we would braid hair a certain way so that people would know that we're getting ready to run away, how we fought back. And then I come through, the migration period when we left the South and migrated north to the Harlem Renaissance, and how, gentrification was taking place. So the white realtors were scared white people saying Black people are moving in because Harlem was predominantly white, but then they wanted to hijack the prices. And so then they scared the white people to sort of, Count Basie and Langston Hughes and Paul Robeson. I mean, you go down the line of people who were all involved in the Harlem Renaissance. And so we just come, every generation, there has been some aspect of how our culture has changed and shifted, but all during the course of that time. And if we think about the Civil Rights Movement, we think about Sam Cooke, we think about Harry Belafonte, we think about Nina Simone, we think about all the people who were involved in the Civil Rights Movement that provided not only some cultural creativity to the movement, but provided some financial resources to the movement. And so then I come all the way up to the Black Lives Matter movement, and how, when Beyonce performed at the Super Bowl, did a tribute to Malcolm X with the X formation. And we could even, I don't include it because we can talk about it, but the Bad Bunny presentation at the Super Bowl last month was clearly a very cultural, political statement. And so we've always tried to find a way to use our culture, to use our creativity, and if we think about the Langston Hughes poem, Let America Be What It's Never Been to Be, this moment that we're in now, our fight back needs to be seriously grounded in how and so when you mentioned Fear of a Black Planet, that fear has been around for a long time. And so there are people now attempting to erase elements of our culture and our history, which is, I tell people now, this is our Jim Crow moment. And so it was 70 years ago when the Montgomery bus boycott was taking place, and we celebrated Rosa Parks and Dr. King and all the people who were participating in that. This is our Jim Crow moment. And so people are going to say about us 50 to 75 years from now, whether we meet this moment the same way that they met it then. And so for me, I really hope that people who are going to listen next week, there'll be some visual slides that will have some songs, some different things that are going to be all involved in the presentation. But the better we understand our culture, Amilcar Cabral talked about how culture was a prerequisite to revolution. And Julius Nyerere, one of our greatest African leaders who sadly most people may not be familiar with, he was a teacher before he became the president, made a very profound statement. Whoever controls the minds of our children controls our future. Yeah. And so we need, as a community, to be really clear about what our children are listening to, what our community is paying attention to, and hold people into account. And so when we think about, and I'll just end on this note. So when Trump got inaugurated the first time, I'm trying to remember the sister's name that sang at his inauguration and got roundly denounced. Her career ended. And then
Chrisette Michelle. Her name was Chrisette Michelle.
Right.
Her name is Chrisette Michelle, right.
So Snoop and some other Negroes performed at Trump this time, and Snoop was one of the biggest critics then these Negroes going to perform this time. And so the same way that we denounced R. Kelly for doing horrible stuff, we need to be denouncing artists who are doing stuff that is complicit and then trying to justify it in some way that may be to their personal benefit, but to our community's detriment. If we're not prepared to think about how we engage our culture and the artists who perform in the culture, then we are not serving ourselves and our community in the best way. And so the intention of the presentation is to help people to understand some of the historic elements of it, to really reflect on what we're doing in this current moment, and to uplift the artists who are actually, having information and creativity that motivates us to continue to civil rights movement, whether it was the Fish Singers and different people, Bernice Reagan Johnson, who's our ancestor, and all different people who were part of singing those songs on those marches when the Klan and the Hoses and the Dogs and that kind of stuff. We need that level of energy right now. And sadly, we have not fought back as a Black community. So with the No Kings marches that have taken place so far, there's been a sprinkle of Black folks in there. But as a Black community, we have not fought back in the manner that we're capable of fighting back. And we're the ones who's being the most negatively impacted by it. And so we need some people who are really step up and say, listen, we're going to do whatever we can do to continue this fight. And so Jesse Jackson, who you're going to do a segment on shortly, if we want to think about that baton being passed, so the baton has been passed to us and to young people to say, listen, we're going to honor King and Malcolm. And in fact, tomorrow would be the assassination, the day that Malcolm was assassinated.
Right.
So we really need to be thinking about, the lessons that they left us, the courage that they provided for us, and how we embrace the legacies that they've left, and what is our role now. And so understanding the culture, advocating around the culture, uplifting artists who are really helping us to move forward, that is the purpose and the intention of the conversation next week.
Now, do you think that part of what we're talking about also in terms of aesthetics is that both the politics and the culture have been co-opted, corporatized? Like when we think about where culture comes from, it comes from our neighborhoods, it comes from our towns, it comes from the clubs that we go to. It's youth culture often creates the new culture, right? Because they create, especially in our community. In our community, it's created, culture is recreated all the time. It's created on a grassroots level, right? Like that's how we have one form of music move to another form of music to another form of artistry. It is like this Black genius creation invention that happens every 20 to 30 years where music and sound and visuals, and it changes with the technology, but it's always been grassroots. Do we think that maybe some of the reason for the apathy, the lack of response, is that culture is now being controlled top down, not bottom up?
To some degree, yes. And so the group Arrested Development, which sadly is no longer functioning as a group anymore, when they did their CD and their album, they talked about it was 300 and whatever number of days before they could actually get a contract, because of the fact that the different record companies wanted them to do the gangster and all the negative kind of stuff, and they refused to do it. So it took them a long time before they actually got their contract. Byron Hurt, and if people never watched the documentary Beyond Beats and Rhymes, talks about that. It's a very phenomenal documentary that he put together, and he talks about the fact that, yes, that the corporate companies came out and then they would, bless with artists that they wanted to bless with, and so they got a whole lot of media attention and how much money they would receive and the videos that came out. And so this struggle, particularly around hip hop, has been one that has, generated a whole lot of conversation and a whole lot of resistance in some way because of the negative images that so many Black women were portrayed in. And so then there was a whole movement at Spelman that started around this whole thing. I mean, so that is certainly a very important element of it. India.Arie, I guess, is an artist who is still, relevant, that did not go down that path. There are some artists who do have some level of profile or high level of profile that have not compromised in the manner that other artists have. And so, which is why I think that the greater that the more extensive we have this conversation in the community, then we can start to bring more attention to artists. So India.Arie almost operates in the mode of Nina Simone, right? I mean, so
that's a good comparison.
But the point I was making is that Nina Simone would go from club to club that were in our communities, and there was a literal circuit that we were culturally connected to in every single city, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that exist? Like, you study aesthetics, beauty, and our culture. In a day where we isolate ourselves, where we are on our computers, where the youth, generators of culture, are online, on phones, a lot of things are being created digitally. You don't necessarily have the in-person meeting spaces where, like, even if you look at our own production, we went from being inside of a studio all meeting together, right, an actual physical place, to being online. Is there something about the bottom, like us being not in this, existing online and
like
not
the Chitlin
existing
circuit back in the day
together? You
right.
said what?
Like the Chitlin circuit back in the day, when Black artists used to come out, they knew that they went to this town, you go to this club, this club, this club, this club.
Exactly.
Yes. And so what I think is that, is there a Chitlin circuit? I'm sure that there is. How is it as extensive as it was in the past? I doubt it. Do we know that if there are certain artists that are going to come to town, that they can do performances at certain locations, or at different, particularly in the summertime when all of these summer festivals are happening, that yes, I think that there could be. And so there are artists who are independent artists who are trying to find, a way to get their art, particularly music, out. And when you think about visual artists, they have to go to museums, they have to go to different places in order to get their art out for people to be able to appreciate it. And so I think that there is it a labor-intensive investment? Absolutely. And so just to reflect on, and I appreciate Zaid, signing my book, that I didn't sign with a major. I'm a self-published author. And so I didn't get a book tour where I went to bookstores and had conversations and all those kind of things. I had to find a way to, inform people about the book, try to participate in conversations that related to the Black family and stuff like that. So yes, there's the pro of, being able to use these platforms or various platforms to be able to have a wide appeal. But then there's also, how much do you compromise either your message or compromise your finances? Because one of the things that happens with the artists who do get on these platforms is how much money the platforms take. So they end up in debt. And so, so they're working basically for free because of the fact that the platform or the company that's putting their information out there has usurped a lot of the money. So, but for me, I do think that whether it's by way of the church, by way of the mosque, by way of, different social organizations that we can find a way, albeit labor intensive, to be able to help independent artists and other authors, or whether visual artists, performing artists, to be able to get the information out. So in fact, Celeste is doing a program Sunday, just inviting people to come to sing. And it's the 100th year anniversary of Symphony Hall in Newark. I mean, so there are, and so while NJ Pack gets a lot of love, Symphony Hall in Newark has a very long and distinguished history. And so how do we make sure that artists that want to, find a venue to be able to, to have some people come out and appreciate their work? Then I think that Symphony Hall, the Performing Arts Center in Broadway, there's different locations that I think that are reasonable enough that we might be able to make something like that take place.
And this goes directly into what you were talking about in the beginning, when you said the essential part of that you have to have culture in order to have any type of revolutionary potential.
Yep.
And that point is then maybe the part of the role of these institutions is to cultivate and foster like these voices that will uplift, that show a particular part of what we want to do, right? And in terms of us.
Absolutely.
Like there's a power there, so that if they're the people who perform there, the people they cultivate there actually start to become like that is how culture is formed.
Mm-hmm. So we think about the Last Poets, right? So I don't know that they had a big contract, but they had a hell of an impact, right? So there are artists who may not have had the big major labels, whatever, supporting them, but you would hear Gil Scott-Heron is another one. He may not have had major artists or major labels supporting him, but his impact was enormous. I mean, so there are artists who are so talented, their message is so relevant that even though they don't get these major companies supporting them, their music or their information could still get out. And so I just think that, yes, we can. And in fact, in WBAI and other, stations that are non-commercial do provide a platform for artists that may not necessarily be assigned or connected to these, major corporations, that they can have a venue to be able to get. And we go to the rallies and protests, that I think that that's an opportunity for those artists and that information to be shared. And I'm hoping, since we're celebrating 100 years of our brother Carter G. Woodson came up with this profound creation for us to celebrate, that we will think about, in different settings, how do we start to make sure that we're providing the kind of information, whether musically, poetically, or whatever form, that people may not hear commonly, but when they hear it, like, oh, I want some of that. That, to me, that's our collective responsibility to figure out how we do that.
I just want to, another one of our hosts just joined us. She just smiles. Sometimes she just smiles.
Hey, Mr. Davis. Hey, Mr. Brinkley. How you doing?
Madam Donna K. Williams joined us.
How y'all doing?
But now that you're here, we're doing better.
Oh, well, thank you.
John, run down for us time and place and how to connect with next Saturday. Let Donna see if she wants to ask some questions on some of that, and we can wrap this up.
Well, no, I'll let them do that round off, then I'll ask the most important question.
Okay.
Saving the best for last.
John Freeze. I think
Looks
I think he froze, but so Bill, you do that part then, right?
Yes.
It's next Saturday. When, where, what time?
Right. So next Saturday, February 28th, from 2 to 4, on the Frontiersman website, on Facebook or YouTube, you can check out the presentation I'm going to do on the imperative of the Black aesthetic and its impact on social movements. And hopefully there'll be a large number of people that will check it out online that particular day, but it will be available after next Saturday for people to be able to see it if they, for whatever reason, are not able to see it next Saturday. But I'm looking forward to the opportunity to be able to share some information and hopefully encourage some people to really think about the role of culture and how culture has been such a critical part of our struggle for freedom.
Now and the way you set up this conversation was huge. But the Black aesthetic is a term that's associated with someone whose name is not what it should be in terms of our consciousness, and I think of Black aesthetic. Of course, I think about the Black arts movement, right? And here on the Jersey side, we bow down as we should to the Lady Mamu.
Yes,
but the Black arts movement had mothers and fathers in a very distributed way, wherever the Black arts grew up in all those cities where we were. Like my teacher, in terms of the art that I do, is Jane Cortez, right?
Okay.
Who's on the West Coast,
right? Right.
West Coast mothers of the Black arts movement. So how this in a few minutes we have left, you got to say something about Mr. Addison Gale.
Absolutely. Addison Gale, Elaine Locke. I mean, when you go back and really think about the people who were really at the foundation of helping to create this whole idea. In fact, one of the first things I do is define what the Black aesthetic means, what Black art must do. And so since we've been, all these negative caricatures of us have been done, with us looking with gigantic eyes and ridiculous lips and all that kind of stuff. And so it's been a long journey for us to be able to figure out how to change these images, how to be comfortable with how the Creator made us, and not to allow these caricatures that Europeans have been saying about us that we know. And so yes, I am just grateful to be able to put together a small slice of what the Black arts movement has done over the hundreds of years that it's been around, even before it was called the Black arts movement, right?
Yes.
And so when we think about it, and that's just here. That's not even talking about, our sisters and brothers in Jamaica and other places in the world that were also fighting back against these same kind of negative stereotypes, this same caricature of us in a negative way. So we've been fighting about this for a long time. In fact, I think about my brother Vincent Harding and his book, There's a River. And he characterizes our struggle as a river, which is always changing. And so, in fact, if you don't read the whole book, just read the introduction. The introduction, while he's a historian, the introduction is like poetry. This brother is just laying something down really incredible. Oh yeah. So I just see my few minutes next week and a few minutes this evening to try to plant the seed for the fact that yes, there are artistic forms that have been around for generations. We can appreciate and acknowledge some of them. There would not be enough time for one presentation to incorporate all of it, but I do think that hopefully it will whet the appetite for some people when they watch and hear some of the stuff that we're going to talk about next week, that will hopefully lead to them actually deciding, yes, I'm going to learn more about this. Or if there's any artists that are going to be watching it, I want my art to be reflective culturally of something that's going to contribute to our struggle for freedom.
And the language of Miri Baraka is one of the ways that we smash the ghost of double consciousness in our minds.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's, I think it's also important to preach it because it's a parallel. There's a parallel, dynamic with this. We talk about 100 years of Carter G. Woodson, and that same period is the emergence of a Harlem Renaissance.
Yes, it is.
And in the Caribbean and the Grismo, all of that is all around the same time.
Absolutely.
This is I know this is not Mr. Brinkley's first time here. Bill, was this your first time here?
Yes, I was briefly on. We were at a protest around the sad murder of Deborah Terrell in New Brunswick, and so Larry and Zaid were on, and so I was able to say a little bit that day. But yes, this is as receiving the link to be on. Yes, this is the first time.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, this is a hip hop political show, so when you're doing the work that you do, and like preparing for next week and those type of sorts of events, or going out and speaking wherever you may be speaking at, Mr. Davis and Mr. Brinkley, is there a hip hop artist or any musician or musical group that you listen to that keeps you inspired?
Oh, sure. Public Enemy is real easy to call them, right?
Okay.
That's all day, every day.
Okay. All
I mean,
right.
you think about how relevant Fight the Power is now versus when it came out way back in the 80s and 90s, right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's amazing.
Hey,
So
do the right
if we
thing.
expand it-
Do the right thing, you know.
Exactly. If we expand it just a little bit, you think about how relevant Bob Marley's War is now,
Oh my
right?
God.
Or Get Up, Stand Up is right now,
His
right?
birthday just a few
Or
weeks
Sam Cooke's A Change is Coming, right? I mean, so there are Nina Simone. I mean, come on. I mean, there's all kind of artists that we could certainly call. I mean, Common and John Legend when they were on the soundtrack for Summer. I mean, there's a whole bunch of artists who have done some amazing stuff that I think that sometimes we forget. But when we need, and so one of the things that people said, when you watch the Eyes on the Prize series, one of the people said, one of the things that was amazing about King and people about the civil rights movement was they took the fear out. And that's what allowed them to face the hoses and dogs and all the kind of criticism they had to face. And so, which is why the Bernice Reagan and Sweet Honey in the Rock, the Fish Singers, all those, they were all instrumental in giving us what we needed. So the chance that we need now, the way that we need to sing now, the way that we need to fight back now, that's to me is this. It's wide open for some artists to come in and do what Public Enemy did then. Now,
Right.
so I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen. That there's going to be some artists who we may not really know very well right now, but we step into this moment. This is their moment.
What's going to be the what's going on of today? Yeah.
Precisely.
Mr. Brinkley, did you say do the right thing? Who said?
You know, when he was talking about Public Enemy, you know, that was one of the theme songs in Spike Lee's movie, Do the Right Thing.
Right. Yes.
So you got to
Radio
ask.
Raheem.
Radio Raheem, yes. And Mr. Brinkley, so is there artists that you listen to?
Well, Bill kind of named them all. So but I'm more old school, you know. I'm more Nina Simone and you know, during that era, you know. But I try and I'm associated with WBAI, but I do listen to BLS, and I definitely listen to WBGO, you know, because that's my jazz station. That's a local station, you know. That's the joint. But BAI, you know, makes his contribution also to on topics that are relevant to what's going on today. But for music and everything, gotta listen to BGO and BLS.
Yeah, as Mr. Brinkley is right, because B.I.G. he talks about there was a jazz artist that kind of mentored him, that kind of lived in the same area as he did. I can't think who it was, but there was a good documentary. He mentioned there was a jazz artist who taught him like the drum beat, and when he was rapping, how to pay attention to the beats of the drum and everything.
Okay.
John, you got a new development going on at WBI. You want to make an announcement?
Yeah, there's a new program coming on March the 4th. Queen Mother Imaku is going to have a program. It's a little early in the morning, 5 a.m., but I hope folks are able to tune into it or listen to it, follow it on the archives. This sister is very Afro-centered spiritualist, and she did a lecture with us, and you can go on to our YouTube or Facebook and put in Plainfield Frontiers to see her lecture that she did last year. But yeah, she will be having a program beginning March the 4th on WBAI 99.5 FM, WBAI.org. You can listen to her 5 o'clock in the morning, a little early, but it'll be worth it.
We all know Mother Imaku, we wish her well. It's a brilliant.
And Mr. Brinkley, make sure you come back because I know y'all got some news unfolding down there in Plainfield with a young man that they just found that had been missing. But I know it's still unfolding, so make sure you come back and bring us up to date because that's a very sad story.
Yes, very sad.
That too. That was healthy to see in spite of the tragedy.
Yeah.
Ooh, then you been in showing a sad note, Donna.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, we can end on. Let's give a shout out to if y'all haven't done it already. To while you're here, to Mayor Sharp James. Today is his birthday.
Oh, okay.
And that's not sad because now you got to think the young man had been missing for a period of time, and so now at least the family can move towards closure and they have answers. Now we just have to figure out what happened.
Right.
Plainfield's a tough little town. It's a tough little town. Well, thank you both.
Yeah.
Next Saturday, February 28th is the day. Tune in and to be in. And to be on, it's going to be a powerful conversation, I know. Very proud of both of these brothers and for what they have represented for our town over a whole lot of years. Our town needs men like John Brinkley and Bill Davis, right? And we need them to get younger too, right?
The next generation, we need to bring them through.
Yeah.
And Mr. Davis,
we have been working the chat. I know y'all saw Safir in the chat. Right?
As y'all talk about artists, are y'all talking about Ruth Carter, Mr. Davis?
Oh, you the assistant at one for Black Panther?
Yeah. But she goes way back to like Do the Right Thing and all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, she has a very distinguished history. Absolutely. And so that's what I was saying to Zaid. There's so many different aspects of our aesthetic that you can include. So in fact, hopefully, at some point, and I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but we need to do some Afrofuturism. And so that could really talk about, I was on a podcast this week. And in fact, when Black women gathered, so this sister Helen Higginbotham does this monthly thing, and they had some folks on talking about AI. And so hearing all the negative stuff about AI, I wasn't really paying attention. Once they broke this down, I was like, oh, wait. I got to start learning AI now, because in reality, the better that we learn it, that we can manipulate it to work in our interest rather than against us. And that was
definitely.
We may need to learn how to defend ourselves from it being used against the real.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And so Afrofuturism to me is one of the things that would be an aspect. And I know that there's this Afrofuturism conference that happens in different places. And at some point, getting some folks on to really explore what it means, how we can embrace it.
Oh, you have to get with Principal Nasir. Yeah, he is. That's all. Yeah, you have to get with Nasir. He just had the Wakanda Ball, and he's been on the forefront of that for a while. So he needs to be at the table when you talk about that, because he's been doing tremendous, making strides that are way beyond what we could even imagine right now. From gaming to everything, every aspect of it.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm absolutely excited to hear that. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with everybody this evening.
Yeah, and we appreciate you back. The
28th, 2 to 4 p.m. Go to YouTube or Facebook and put in Plainfield Frontiers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Peace and blessings, everybody.
Peace.
All right.
Peace. All right, Zaid, you can introduce our next guest.
Hamza.
How you guys doing?
Well, politics are local, beloved. Right before I sent you the link, I found a powerful clip of you with Medea Benjamin, Code Pink.
Oh yeah.
Your cousin. I'll send it to you. She just had like a 30-second clip of the conversation, but it was good. And Medea Benjamin represents the handful of folks that we need some real solidarity from to keep this country from going too far backwards. So I got to just say that at the top of this conversation. We have on this plot several things. Just quickly to just to show you how we roll here in this particular platform. Hamza, we've 2 weeks ago we had some clergy who from this area sojourned to Minneapolis and who were very much a part of the fight back that is taking place in Minneapolis around this invasive occupying monstrosity that has been imposed upon us called ICE, right? And right here locally at Delaney Hall, we've got about 8 to 10 organizations who are there every day, taking turns doing mutual aid, helping the families on the inside and trying to help folks and helping families on the outside on that. And we lost somebody at Delaney Hall and Julius Wilson Brutus just before the new year came in. And that, of course, needs all the attention and solidarity that we can get. And of course, one of the ugly things about this emergence of ICE and deportation and all that is that people are snatched out of their families' environments and not just taken into custody, but taken and shipped as far away as possible in many cases to not even be allowed to have any kind of meaningful support in this whole thing. Now, I have been aware of your cousin's situation, but I did not realize until a minute ago that she was based right here in Jersey in Paterson.
Sir.
And of course, Paterson has a large Palestinian community. And I just started working in Paterson, and you're like, Paterson's got to have that conversation about how to get ready for these folks because they're coming.
Right.
I found out about your cousin, and I just screamed. I knew about her condition, but I did not know the Paterson link. Right. So
yeah.
Before you talk about what we're facing with Leqaa, what needs to happen, I want you to tell the family story, because people still, by virtue of the influence of the Zionist establishment on media, this is a media platform, right? People do not appreciate the kind of loss of life that is happening, and what, and I'm almost getting tongue-tied. But we want you to tell your family story about your homeland, then tell Leqaa's story. Then we want folks to know who Leqaa is and everything that's being done now that needs to be supported to get her free.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Before I continue, can everyone hear me okay?
We hear you fine.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, the family story, unfortunately, way before October 7th, ever since I was a kid, the cadence of losing someone was, often, right? And it'll be, when I was a young kid, it'll be people I never met, but they were, related to me by blood. And then as I became older, I would go visit Gaza. I would visit Palestine. I would visit family members and then come back home. I was born and raised in New Jersey. And then my dad would say, yeah, hey, remember so-and-so? They passed away too. So far before October 7th, we always endured the mourning of losing family members whenever, the state of Israel would just bombard the streets of Gaza without regard to human life. So it's kind of funny. It's not funny. It's weird to see like the world wake up to it now, right? Only when Israel experienced like a tiny, tiny bit of what we've been experiencing for almost 100 years on one day, right? Which is October 7th. Right. So it's like that needed to happen in order for us to matter. That's the funny part about it. But yeah, I mean, being an American citizen, my entire family is American citizens, and I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, moved out to a small town called Phillipsburg, and in many ways I kind of had like identity crisis, not fitting in with like certain groups of demographics and whatnot, especially after 9/11. So as an American citizen, like I've never truly felt like free, right? In the land of the free. And like a good transition is my cousin, Leqaa, came to this country looking for freedom, right? And the complete opposite happened. So you try, like, people are lied to, or they have this like false reality of what America is. And the state of the country is in right now, it's not what it's supposed to be and not what it ever was. And it's a shame, it's a shame. And America, if you look at the history, I feel like it's almost like America doesn't have like a decent time in where it could just be normal for just like a little bit, right? If it wasn't the Italians, it was the African Americans. If it wasn't them, it was the Arabs. If it wasn't them, it was the Asians. There's always something historically going on in America where we can't all just be, right? And I'll get into my cousin's case a little later, but it's a shame on where the country is and how innocent families and innocent people like myself don't feel free, And one small example of that is I'm just a normal guy, right? I have a normal job. And yes, I have family in Palestine, right? And my bank account got shut down just for sending money over to Palestine, right? There's no laws that say it's illegal to send remittances overseas, whether it be Italy or Brazil or Portugal. It does not matter. So my bank.
And to be clear, like, remittances are one of the most common things inside of the United States, right? Like, people who live here and have relatives abroad always send them. That's why there's even the term remittances, because people send money back home all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's at the power of our palms. It's right here on our phones, right? So why would something illegal be readily available and monitored, right, by the banking system? But I was targeted from that aspect, right? So it's a weird time to be alive, and it's an interesting time to be an American, but it's sad. It's sad, and change needs to happen for all people, right? Because the state of the country right now is not in a good state.
You're right. You're absolutely right about that. Somebody used the language early, and I think it was the mayor. I don't know if you heard the earlier part of our show, that we're at a crossroads, and indeed we are.
Right.
The whole world is at a crossroads, I would dare say. And I want we brought you on to do the talking, not me, right? Over what is happening in Gaza. Not only are people being slaughtered and displaced in genocidal fashion, but you've got two men, Trump and Netanyahu, who are trying to carve it out in a way that they can buy off a portion of and undo the very United Nations apparatus as it exists with this border peace. It is ridiculous.
Right.
The intentionality and the money that is being bandied about to do this co-opting of really what should be our most natural allies in this particular fight is something to appreciate. So let's walk it back now. Let's start talking about your incredible cousin. Tell us her story and how she wound up, in her ordeal.
Yeah, so Leqaa Kordia, she's a daughter to a U.S. citizen, right? She came to this country legally about 10 years ago. She's extremely loved by her community. She's extremely devoted to her faith. She's unapologetically Palestinian, and she, has no criminal record, has never hurt anyone. She just lives. She flies under the radar. She was a waitress in Paterson, New Jersey, and she attended a protest in April of 2024 outside of Columbia University. She's not a student at Columbia University.
Solidarity.
She's not. She wouldn't even consider herself a political activist, right? At the time, both her and I lost close to 200 family members in Gaza. So the very least that we can do.
Hold on a second.
Is
Wait, hold on. Like,
Hold
I
on.
think that's what you lost over 200 family members.
Yes.
Folks need to process that. We got to process that.
Mhm.
Like you just said that and just was like,
Right. That's part of what I was getting at when I asked you the original question of your family story, because that's a part of your family story.
Because that is clearly why you would be there.
Told. Needs to be
Right.
told.
Can you? I'm not asking you to. Like you went over that quickly. There might have been a lot of reasons for that. I'm not asking you to go back to something you want to go to. But are you talking about over a period? Like what? Like that? It's hard for me to process what you just said, right? Because I was about to ask a stupid question. The stupid question was, over what time? Like over your period lifetime? Like multiple lifetime? 200 family members is crazy.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's not at the same time. When you think about what Gaza is and how congested it is, from how big the territory is, and I tell people all the time, think of like Thanksgiving dinner, right, or Christmas morning, or Christmas night, or Christmas Eve, or think about going to, I don't know, someone's graduation, right, or a birthday party. Here in the States, you might have like 20 people, right? 30 people, maybe more, right? And it's people coming from all over the place, right? We get in our cars, we drive to the event. Life in Gaza is a little different. So the majority, not everyone, but a lot of people live in buildings, right? So like the first floor would be a store, let's say, right? And then as families get bigger and bigger and bigger, they just add levels. So it'll be like the oldest person on level 1, and then his or her son, level 2, and their whole family. Level 3, their daughter and her husband, or their son and their wife and all their kids. And then like levels just keep going. So think of like Thanksgiving times 5 in like one building, right? And this was like early 2024, right before like the protests got serious. This is when like they were just carpet bombing all of Gaza, like without no regard, and the whole BS of like, oh, we're Hamas is hiding people, or they're hiding other civilians. It's all BS, right? So yes, and those weeks that will go by, we had no contact with like my aunts, right, my cousins, cousins of cousins, and the family. You look at a simple family tree, it just keeps going, especially in that part of the world. So the number 200 is big, but it's relatively small at the same time, in the grand scheme of things, compared to the total number of people that were murdered by Israel. I mean, and not to sound abnormal, but unfortunately, it's something that like I've kind of just become numb to, just being real with you.
And we can't let our world, I had a comment on just a few minutes ago, this is our time. We can't let our world, our time, allow that to become the order of the day.
Mm-hmm.
We can't allow that, right? So solidarity is indeed the order of the day. So we wanted everybody to process that, so they can figure out how and why and where they need to step up their own solidarity game.
Right.
Because that's what this is all about. That's why we brought you to this particular platform, to really build that. A lot in our community, by virtue of the impact of the Zionist influence on our movement. We were talking about that earlier. Right?
And I think that even forces people to deal with the idea of genocide. Like, there's no world in which someone loses 200 family members and it's not genocide. Like,
Right.
that it's inconceivable to lose that many. Like you just said, family members, like just cousins and aunts and uncle, like just like 200 family members is not incidental. That's not right. It's one of those things where if you say it,
group.
right, and the worst part is when I've been reading various stories, it seems like that is not uncommon for people to say the number of people in their family who are not here.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, and I mean the saddest part is like, you know, when I would go there when I was younger, 16, like early 20s, I would have all these cousins, and all those cousins, they got married and they had kids. So in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I can't wait to meet them, right? Can't wait to meet them, right? Like any normal close cousin would say. And that thought process never came to fruition. But
yeah.
Hamza, you know, it makes me think of my dad from Jamaica. And there's a saying that they say, like, if you're riding along the roads in Jamaica, you'll see structures that seem to be half built. And a local Jamaican, like, soon come, like they build as they need. So as you were saying, so maybe they just had one child and they just built enough for that household and the one child. But then as the family grows, they continue to build on that house. So that's immediately what I thought of when you were talking about the structures and building. But to think, when we seen the pictures of Gaza and when the destruction was happening, it's also conceivable to see in terms of how you just said that one structure is built, then another. So it's all family in a large structure. So that's how so when they go to knock down or a bomb hits the structure, they haven't while the community is close, but you're literally saying that structure was full of all family members that they could have taken out at one time. So that's and then to see, you know, them giving out food and to see a young person receiving the food. That's always my thought. Like you just said, you were young and you will go back and forth. Like the period of being an innocent child, how that's lost so quickly because you have to grow up quickly with the conditions that you're living in. So, you know, your childhood, and we all adapt in some form or fashion. And meeting your cousins and I also think of the pictures that how close it was to water and things like that. Are there times, you know, when you think of your childhood, were there, you know, do you have memories that what were a lot of your childhood memories like going back and forth when you went back?
No, that's a good question. You know, I think as occupied as Gaza and Palestine is, as an individual, the one thing that I felt the most was freedom, right? No crime, right? Like this is back in the day before we had like Uber. I don't even think Uber was a thing there. But there was no real taxi system, for example, right? So if you were going to the beach, for example, you would kind of just like throw your thumb up. And if someone was going in that direction, they'll kind of stop, roll the window down and say, where you want to go? And you say, oh, I'm going to the beach. And they're like, oh, I'm kind of going there, hop in. And you could pay them or you can't pay them. They would just like kind of like look after you. So it was like a strong sense of like community everyone kind of looked out for each other. You know, I remember as a kid, my grandfather and my dad, they would write in Arabic like an IOU piece of paper, and I would like go to the store and buy chips and snacks. Right? Imagine walking to a bodega here in the States as a 6-year-old and just walking out with some chips and drinks and giving someone a piece of paper. Right? They had no idea who I was. Right? But little did I know at the time, my grandfather knew who they were. He probably signed it or somewhat, and they would always like, you know, give me a hug and kiss and say, "Hey, take all the snacks. It's all good." Like you don't get, like you don't experience anything like that. Maybe in the islands you do, right? In some parts of the Caribbean, but that's like the biggest resignation that I have with like the memories that I have as a kid in Gaza. And even like my cousin, you know, me and my cousin Leqaa, we were just young kids roaming the streets of Gaza, playing in the sand, playing soccer, random sports, with no worries of like is someone going to kidnap us or are we going to get lost. It's just like all one close-knitted Islamic, and there was some Christians there too. Like they were all God-fearing people living in pure like peace, right? And then it's sad that we had to like live under the occupation of the state of Israel, and it got worse and worse over time.
Yes,
you know, like the last, you know, I know you asked me about my childhood, but going into like my adulthood, the last time I was there, it was very interesting. I remember the first day I was there, I was walking in the middle of the street, everything was normal. And then you would just start hearing generators everywhere, right? So just think of like the sound of a generator throughout all the streets, right? Because Israel would just like shut off the power grid for X amount of hours. So everyone had to put the generators on to keep like things like milk and meat and dairy cold. So, and then there'll be nights where we're all like trying to watch TV or watch a movie, and then everything pitch black, right? And then we're just like kind of forced to go to sleep because they controlled the power grid there. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And it's crazy to think that the people that think that they're the chosen ones, God's chosen people, would act like that.
And it's sad. And as Zaid, and I was going to say, Zaid just talked about this new council. I know there has to be, because it's like a power grab, like they're talking about rebuilding Gaza, and so it's a big real estate deal, what it looks like to me. And I don't know, that has to be very, very upsetting as well.
I know that we've gotten a lot in the interview, but we haven't gotten to the point, right? Like of talking about your cousin.
Mm-hmm.
So what's been going on with that?
In regards to my cousin?
Yes, who was taken, because part of it is to highlight what she's going through and what's going on right now. Because you've established there's more than enough reason why she would be at the protest.
Yeah.
Anybody would be at a protest just protesting, right?
Right.
Yeah, that was, and thanks for bringing it back to that, because her as an individual, the least thing that she can do with no platform, she's not an influencer, she's not a politician. The very least thing you could think of is to go out in the streets and protest, and that's exactly what she did. And the only reason why not only is she locked up right now, but she was taken from New Jersey and sent 1,500 miles away in the middle of Texas is because she's Palestinian. And she spoke up against what's going on in Gaza. And it's very clear, the government made it, they cannot make it more clear that she was targeted and she's being penalized for for exercising her freedom of speech in the form of protest. They purposely put her in the 5th district, right? And the 5th district is more quote unquote racist, right? More selective. And they gave her a judge that has like a really high denial rate for asylum cases. Like all of this stuff is planned and orchestrated and very intentional. And DHS has no regard to the judicial system. They have no regard to the Constitution of the United States of America. And this is, at its core, it's an American issue, right? Trump's whole slogan is "Make America Great Again," right? What happened to the America where you could go out to the streets and protest, right? In the Constitution, all persons have that right of freedom of speech. It's not just the citizens; it's all people. So, that they're cherry picking, right? Oh, well, we don't like what you had to say about Palestine, so we're going to make an example out of you. And the reason why I say it's very obvious is because the judge, her immigration judge in court, released her on bond. They released her on bond, and we tried posting it, and then they filed something called an automatic stay. Basically like, hey, I changed my mind. So she stayed another 90 days, and then she went to another court hearing. The same judge was like, why is she still in detention? I'm releasing her on bond again. During that court hearing, DHS conceded to her not being a threat or not being a flight risk with no evidence, right? And then they wouldn't even allow me to post bond. They're like, no, we just changed our mind. She's going to stay. So it's like they're like the mafia on steroids. They do whatever they want. And there's no respect for our due process, and there's no respect for our judicial system. And it's very, very clear. Someone like Leqaa should have spent a single day in detention, right? Not one day, right? And if the government was like a little bully, she would have went to detention. And her first bond hearing, they would have been like, okay, she's not a risk, she's a nobody, let her out. But no, they did it twice, and now she's spending her second Ramadan locked up. She's about to hit her year mark, and she was recently hospitalized for 3 days. And DHS didn't tell us, the family, where she was, where her whereabouts, where her condition was, and neither did they tell her legal counsel. She had no access to her legal counsel. That place has gotten her so sick that she fainted and caught her first seizure of her life at the age of 33.
Seizure, yeah.
Yeah, because she's extremely malnutritious and no real food. She's living off of like small snacks, food that she doesn't really know what she's eating, horrible sleep, no privacy to pray, right? And when you're at the lowest moments of your life, faith is probably the biggest thing. One can argue it's the biggest thing. Besides food and water and things like that. And for her to not even feel like clean or worthy of praying or have the privacy to pray, that demoralizes her even more.
Now,
right?
now,
So
on that note, because you're getting to where we wanted to go with this, because we really want to amp up the urgency of her condition, right? Somebody got to see her before she got sick, and then saw her again since she's been sick, and there's a big difference, right?
Yeah,
get at that.
Yeah, so I saw her right before she got sick. I saw her February 1st, right? And she looked horrible. Eyes all dark, real pale, real skinny, fragile. And just like you see in the movies, through wired glass, she couldn't even hold her phone. She had to kind of tuck her phone underneath her head, and she laid down just to talk to me, because she was so weak she couldn't lift up her phone. 4 days later, she gets hospitalized, right? And I saw her when she first got detained, right? Like, we're all healthy in the comfort of our homes right now. If any one of us on this show right now lived the life of a detainee in Texas for 5 days, all of us will visually look different, visually. So I saw that back then, a year ago. And I'm there talking to her. I'm like, damn, She looked really bad. Fast forward almost a year later, I saw her again. She looked worse. And now she's hospitalized and she's like too shy to even go on like camera when I try to call her. So it's the government has to pay in some fashion, because they stripped her from her liberty and from her freedom an entire year of her life for no reason other than exercising her freedom of speech.
We just lost, and I'm going to shift to, I'm going to refer to two losses that, in terms of what I do in my work. Locally, we just lost a Haitian detainee in John Wilson Brutus, who was not even detained as long, but clearly, he died in their custody because he was neglected in any kind of meaningful care.
Right.
I have deep ties to the Black Liberation Movement. You see this guy over my shoulder is Malcolm, right? Who brought the Black Liberation Movement to Palestinian solidarity decades ago, right? And we just lost Imam Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin in custody. He was one of our long-standing political prisoners because of his direct ties to the Malcolm paradigm. We lost him in custody, in captivity. And in neither case should this have happened. So we come now to talk about your cousin's case, to amp up the urgency and to talk about where are those places to plug in targeted support and solidarity to amplify the case for her being released, right? To help her now, right? What buttons are we pressing? Who are we throwing rocks at, and who do we need to turn the volume up on?
Yeah, so I was in DC a few weeks ago lobbying for her local congresswoman, Nellie Poe, spoke up against her, and that's all through pressure. People work under pressure. And right now, the best support you can give her, anyone that's watching, is to go on her Instagram page. It's free, and then her full name, Leqaa Kordia, LEQAA KORD as in dog, IA. And there's a shuft there to donate for her. There's a petition that you can sign online that I think the website like automatically sends a letter to like your local representatives. And even if you're not tech savvy, even if you're not on Instagram, the best thing that the people can do, and this is what she would want, is to continue fighting for the liberation of Palestine. And her fight is the Palestinian fight.
Right on.
Right. Her getting out is a win for Palestine. Right. And I urge people to contact their local electives, elected officials, and
let's check this out. I want to put a pin in something locally, right? And you mentioned Nellie Poe, right? The city of Paterson had a press conference in support of her, right? And Nellie Poe spoke against it. Is that what you did? She actually spoke against it?
No, she spoke up for her at some hearing a few weeks ago, and that was because of my time in DC. And one of her staffers actually held a picture of the car.
All right.
So we need people like we need
where
more.
Nellie Poe is taking some of that APAC money. All right, just making it.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we gotta, that's a paradigm that needs to be shattered.
Oh yeah. Who has it?
I want a clarification on that. Right on. Okay.
Right. So. Yeah. And the reason why I say it's an American issue, guys, is because today it's Palestine. Today, 2025, 2024, 2026, it's Palestine. But if DHS gets away with what they're doing, in 5 years, it could be something else. It could be something totally else. The world is a big place, and there's always things going on. And as Americans, we should have the freedom to go protest and whatever it is that we believe in. And in 2030, if the administration, whoever's in office, doesn't like that, they're going to have the right to lock you up. Come on now. It's ridiculous.
And thank you for I know that we're reaching the end of this segment, but thank you for coming on. I think that like what we're getting in a lot of this is the connections between different struggles that go on, and like we always say with Black people, we've never had rights. We've always Like the reason why Black Panthers were in prison is because they just, they demanded the same basic rights as everybody else, right? Like they demand democracy, they are locked up. They speak up, they are killed, right? And so we agree, right? Like that these things are we think that we don't care if it affects one population, but these things affect us all in the way that these methods are exported and imported again. We look at police tactics, we look at weaponry, we look at things that are going on at home, and then they go abroad, and then they come back home.
Right.
And so, yes, absolutely. Is there anything else that you would like to tell us? I know we're running out of time, but anything else you'd like to tell us about next action? Is there a protest? Is there an action that's going on? Is there something that besides writing our politicians and local politicians and getting them to speak out and bring it into the fore, is there an event that is upcoming that would shed more light?
Yeah, I know that there's gonna be like, I think, some sort of like power hour, like a phone banking power hour, that we're trying to work on behind the scenes, just to kind of try to like reach out to local electives. Once I get more details, I could definitely like keep you guys in the loop for that.
Okay, yeah, and also, you're welcome to come back on, and we'll want you back on for updates and frequently, because I think that something like this has to be always kept at the fore. I think you educated a lot of people tonight in a casual way, in a point that you just walked over, right? Like when you talked about the number of family members, it is shocking in its number, and it's shocking in the casualness of the matter of factness of it. And it also helped give a lot of context to why someone who is a waitress would go to a protest, because you lose 200 family members and people don't care. You might want to speak out, right? You might want to say your voice, which is the most American thing you can do.
Right. No, I'm with you. I agree.
So thank you again for coming on, and we're going to definitely have you back very, very soon.
Tomorrow is
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Let me tell you, I want you to hear this from me, Hamza. Tomorrow is the anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X, and I'll be in 2, maybe 3 public places where we will be lifting that up loud, proud, and strong in the tradition of his ancestry and his leadership, because that's how we get down.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Hamza, before you leave, thank you again for coming. As Jonathan Zaid said, this is a hip hop political show. As you are doing all the work that you've been doing over the last year, and that you will continue to do in your family's name, and so that you can continue to educate the community, is there a hip hop artist that you listen to, individual or group, that keeps you inspired?
Artists. I mean, yeah, all the time. A whole bunch. A whole bunch.
It was just one or two.
There's some strong Palestinian hip hop we need to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can't give one. I mean, I'm a huge Tory Lanez fan. Drake, Max B from my brother from another mother. He introduced me to him back in college, and he just got out of jail, so he's putting out music with French Montana now.
Okay, Max B. Okay.
Yeah, and then just totally random, but there's actually a Muslim rapper out in the UK. His name is M. Honcho, and he has like a whole different like genre. It's kind of like a looseness type of rap.
M.
Yeah,
we're gonna look that up.
That's right.
Yeah. I know. I think it's just M. Honcho.
M. Honcho.
Yeah, and then when he passed away, I was on a whole Nipsey Hussle vibe. Nipsey Hussle was actually my very first concert that my boy took me to in New York. So rest in peace, Nipsey.
Gypsy Hustle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got a playlist for you. We got Max B, Drake, M. Honcho, M. Honcho, Tory Lance. So we got a whole list for you. We'll keep that in mind. We'll be ready for you when you come back. Okay.
All right. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Peace.
Blessings. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too.
Palestinians, que viva. Oh, wow. Who we got? Who we got in the back? We got 7 people.
I see Junius. There you go. Mr. Williams.
Lawrence Hamm.
Sharon, how you doing, sir?
That's Kamm. All right. We got, but there's 7. Who's the 7th?
No, we have everyone.
Okay. All right.
We have Kamm, Lawrence Hamm, and Junius Williams.
And guess what? We are all somebody.
I am somebody.
We all Jesse Louis Jackson. Brothers, let's come on, jump in this conversation and talk.
None of y'all better start off like that dude did in 1600. None of that. His crazy write-up about Jesse Jackson. Champion, you didn't read that?
I didn't see that.
I'll send it to you, sir.
Probably good that you did. Right?
I mean, if it's crazy, sometimes don't even give it light, right?
Yeah.
I've been trying to get you on here for a minute, and you're the youngest in the conversation.
Chairman, like, yes.
So why don't you set this off? Why don't you tell us your Jesse stories and why Jesse's legacy matters and should continue to matter?
All right, thank you, everybody. I'm glad to see you. Glad to be here. My Jesse story starts really at the National Bar Association. I used to be president of the National Bar Association, and I've been going to all the summer conventions. I think I only missed one since 1971, and that was the year that my mother died in 1984, I think it was. So, but Jesse comes too. Jesse came too. Jesse loved the NBA. And even though I was involved in mass civil rights benches, I can't say that my statute was anywhere near that of Jesse's. So I was glad to be able to be involved with him at the NBA. And so one day, one of our past presidents, a man named O.T. Wells, called together some of the past presidents and some other people. I think we met in Cleveland because the word was out Jesse was going to run for president. Well, I was glad to be in the service. And Jesse came and mesmerized everyone as only Jesse could do. And when we finished, O.T. Wells, by the way, lived in New Jersey for a while. He finished up his days in Harlem. He was quite a guy. A lot of stories about him as well. Great trial, criminal defense lawyer, great trial attorney in general. He and Jesse were tight. O.T. was the son of a holiness minister. So he knew how to preach, he knew how to raise money, he knew how to have fun, and Jesse was right there with him. He raised a whole lot of money for Jesse that day. My contribution to Jesse was not in raising a whole lot of money, because I didn't have a whole lot of money. But I was able to do some time for Jesse. Jesse, in his second race, some of the black folks in the Democratic Party said there are two things that there's one thing that bothers us because it has two kinds of ramifications. One, when you voted for Jesse, people thought that's all you needed to do to get his delegates. Well, the delegates were way down the ballot somewhere. People didn't know who they were and how to get down there. So they asked me to go to court and get one vote for everybody. So I said I would do it. I went into Superior Court, and for some reason why it was in Jersey City, I don't remember why, but that's where they had it. And I presented my case relying upon the Civil Rights Act of 1965. And I won. it was a big case. For me, it was a big case for Jesse and his people, because all you had to do was vote one time for Jesse, and you got Jesse and his delegates. So that's my close and personal story for Jesse. Now, how close and personal was it for Jesse? I told him the next time I saw him at the NBA convention, I said, you know, I represented you on that single level voting. And he said, oh, okay. And so I said, all right. But I really wasn't doing it for Jesse. I was doing it for us, because we needed to be able to vote for who we wanted to. But that, I won't take too much time telling the other stories. They were, when I got to know him a little better, there was a little more familiarity. But that I think is one of the stories I will always remember.
Well, before the next person goes on, Mr. Williams, when everybody's recognizing Jesse, that's the one thing they're recognizing him for. So we need to put a pin in that and put that on some Jersey history. We didn't know you were behind that case. Wow.
And that's an important segue, right? You know, one of our guests was a delegate, and then, and our top person for the New Jersey Rainbow Coalition. That's the Demo Chunga, Lawrence Hamm. Right, that's a good segue for you, right? Why don't you jump on in here and you got your share of Jesse stories. Is something we lose him? Oh, there you go. Okay, all right. You muted.
You're muted.
You muted, Demo.
I'm glad to see Junius.
Yeah, we all.
I will never let him forget that he got me out of jail in December 1974. When I got dragged out of the city council meeting by the Newark police. Earl Harris was the president of the city council, and I was down there speaking out against you, Junius. You remember the R32 housing project that Baraka was pushing? See, it wasn't just Coweta Towers. There were some other projects, and R32 was one of them. And I said some things that Earl Harris didn't like. And he said, if you insult this council one more time, you're going to be arrested. And I insulted Earl Harris one more time. And they dragged me out. I didn't even know there was a special tunnel from City Hall to the police station. I'd never seen that before. And they said, you can make one phone call. I called my wife. I said, call Junius Williams. And I was out of jail the next morning. Junius got me out of jail. And eventually we went to trial, and the judge threw the charges out against me. So thank you, Junius. I never will let you forget that. With regard to Jesse Jackson, my first encounter with Jesse was in 1971 in New Orleans at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference National Convention. I didn't actually meet him at the Roosevelt Hotel where the convention was being held. The first time I saw him was in the street, of New Orleans. He was in the street and being mobbed by people and everything. And we connected then, but that night, because I came out of the Newark Black Power movement, and I thought there were only three great speakers as far as I was concerned: Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Amiri Baraka. But Jesse was the guest speaker that night at the SCLC dinner, and Jesse held that audience spellbound for almost 3 hours. In fact, and this was not just any 3 hours, it was from like 9:30. He didn't even start speaking until about 9:30. And he went till past 11:30, but he held the audience enraptured. And then again, he invited me out to Detroit for Operation Breadbasket rally. And then again, I heard him give a powerful speech. This time it was outdoors to several thousand people. And again, he held the audience enraptured and they were already on their feet. I guess you could say he put the audience in a state of euphoria. That's when he was called the country preacher. And he's Junius, you remember Kamm probably remember too when he used to wear that big Martin Luther King medallion, you know, at that time when he was still wearing afro. And then we connected again at the Gary Convention in 1972. And his speech at Gary is just about in every documentary on the Gary Convention and in Eyes on the Prize. I don't know how many people remember the Eyes on the Prize documentary,
Yes,
but
sir.
I think Eyes on the Prize 1 goes up to 1972 to the Gary Convention. And Jesse gave his famous Nation Time speech. Before that, you know, his famous refrain in his speeches was, "I am somebody," you know. And then when he got to Gary, it was Nation Time. But the Nation Time slogan was actually, I believe, coined by Amiri Baraka in 1970. In fact, he wrote a poem under that title called Nation Time. I think you can find it in the Amiri Baraka reader or Leroy Jones reader. Now, Gary was interesting because simultaneous to Gary, Shirley Chisholm was running for president. Shirley did not come to the convention, but her campaign was discussed intensely during the convention. She didn't come to Gary for whatever reason. I'm not going to get into that. And she didn't get the convention nomination. And unfortunately, she didn't win the Democratic Party nomination either, but she had a powerful campaign. So that was 72. So by 1984, so this idea of running for a Black person for president had been out there for a long time, you know. And so by 1984, as Junius pointed out, Jesse declared that he was going to run for president. Now, people were discussing a presidential candidate before Jesse announced. And when Jesse announced, there was a lot of grumbling, particularly from the elected officials. You know, a lot of them were, you know, they like Jesse, but they felt somebody who was the office holder should be running for president. And then there was also a faction of people that was supporting Julian Bond for president. But Jesse wasn't waiting on anybody to select him. And in his audacious way, he declared. And in 1984, he asked Ken Gibson to be the campaign manager for the campaign chairman for his New Jersey campaign for president. And there was, you know, it's interesting because in today's Insider NJ, I don't know why, but Max Pizarro put up excerpts of an article from the New York Times in 1984 pointing out that we had formed, I say we, activists, include myself, had formed something called New Jersey Citizens for Jesse Jackson. That was because some people were feeling locked out of the official campaign. So we formed New Jersey Citizens for Jesse Jackson. We didn't try to supplant the official organization, but we tried to reach people that the official organization couldn't reach. And so Jesse did well in 1984. He began to put out the concept of the Rainbow Coalition. And that wasn't new either, because Zaid, you know that Fred Hampton, I believe, first put that out in a serious way in 1968. Fred Hampton, who was a leader of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party. But, you know, it kind of fit because now Jesse, you know, in 72, he's talking about Nation Time. That's when Black people were trying to get the votes so that we could take over those places that we were in the majority, you know, those cities, towns where we were in the majority. We should be the mayor, we should be the majority of council, et cetera, et cetera. But to be president, he needed more than Black America. He needed to be able to put together a serious coalition. And so the Rainbow Coalition, you know, that fit. I mean, it fit, you know, from a rhetorical perspective, but it also fit from a kind of operational perspective, because he had to cobble together a broad enough coalition so that he could be a serious contender for president. And that's why we remember his campaigns in 84 and 88. He wasn't the first Black person to run for president, but he was the first one to mount campaigns that were taken seriously, and that, you know, he gave them people some competition. So the Rainbow Coalition concept became an organization. In 1987, we took people down to the National Rainbow Convention, you know, and eventually New Jersey Citizens for Jesse Jackson became the New Jersey chapter of the National Rainbow Coalition. And then Jesse came back in 88, you know, and campaign was deadly serious in 88. He won, I believe, 11 primaries. He got 7 million votes, you know, and he was giving these people a run. I think there was a lot of consternation in the ruling circles, because I mean, there was a point there before the whole Town fiasco, and I think that was a plot. I think that was staged, you know, that Jesse could become #1. Now he didn't win the nomination, but he came in second, serious second. He had like a third of the delegates, and his speech that he gave, the Keep Hope Alive speech, I think is considered one of his greatest speeches. I was a delegate in 88 for Jesse Jackson to the Atlanta. What happened was in 88, Gibson had been defeated by Sharp James in 1986. So Jesse came back and asked Sharp James to be the campaign chairman for his New Jersey campaign. And Sharp James, being a little more astute, he didn't want a bifurcated campaign like there was in 1984. So he asked me to be co-chairman. That way we didn't have two Jesse Jackson organizations. We had one Jesse Jackson organization, and Jesse did much better in New Jersey in 88 than he did in 1984. So you know, those are some of the intersections I had with Jesse Jackson. I think the thing to remember, Jackson was a bridge to the past in that he was a directly connected to Dr. King, but he was also, he laid a path to the future. You know, he ran 2 serious campaigns. Those 2 campaigns made it possible for Barack Obama to become president. I joined with the others who have said, I sincerely believe, had Jesse not had those campaigns in 84 and 88, Barack Obama wouldn't have been president in 2008. And I'm glad
the Rainbow Coalition Junius became the Obama Coalition.
Right. And let me just end with this. I'm glad that Junius reminded me, I've forgotten about that, Junius, about the whole delegate piece, right?
That's a serious piece.
That is a serious piece, because one of the reasons people wouldn't get delegates, as Junius said, was they would come in and vote for the candidate, but they wouldn't pull the levers for the delegates.
Mm-hmm.
By doing that, 1 vote was enough to get the delegates. So the other thing, so that was one major change to the primary process that Jesse was responsible for. But another major change was the selection of delegates changed from a winner-take-all system to a system of proportional representation.
Yes, sir.
So in other words, make it very simple. If you won 50 plus 51% of the votes, you would get all the delegates. But Jesse put forward a formula that delegates should be awarded based on the percentage of votes you received in that particular primary. And that's one of the reasons he had more delegates in 1988 than he did in 1984. And that also helped Barack Obama later on. The last thing I want to say is, the thing to remember about Jesse Jackson's campaigns in 1984 and 1988 is not just that a Black candidate won, but a Black candidate running on a progressive, what some people would call today a left-wing agenda, an agenda that merged the struggle for racial justice with the struggle for economic justice. And you can see a continuity from the Economic Bill of Rights that Martin Luther King was calling for in '68 to the Poor People's Campaign agenda, because the Poor People's Campaign, they had an agenda. They weren't just sitting in down there. They had a set of demands. And then that was '68. And then the Gary, the agenda that came out of the National Political Convention of Gary. And then when you look, just Google, all you got to do is Google Jesse Jackson. What was Jesse Jackson's platform in 1988? And you'll see. And all of a sudden, Bernie Sanders doesn't look so much like a pioneer, because everything that Bernie Sanders was calling for in '16, and I'm not taking anything away from Bernie, I'm just trying to show the continuity. All those things that Bernie was talking about, most of them were in the Jackson platform of 1988.
Kamm, jump in this, right? You told a very telling situation about how you first encountered Jesse when you were quite young. And you right there in Chi-Town, you right there in Chicago, where a whole lot of stuff is popping off, right? And how all, the Chicago environment that Jesse shaped and that Jesse was shaped by. In your remarks, I want you to conclude some of all of that in there.
Well, I really would have loved to have jumped in first and let the two elders take out the majority of the time in this segment, because I really was not a Jesse Jackson fan or advocate or follower. None of the time I've been in Chicago. I've always considered myself a Black nationalist, and I respected Jesse Jackson for a lot of reasons, but just wasn't someone who paid close attention and worked alongside of his projects and his work that he did here in Chicago. Of course, we, like everyone, watched the news and watched, the tremendous work that Jesse was doing nationally and internationally, represented us as Black men and as Black people, period, but also as Black men. And so we relished that. But I was not one who aligned himself closely with the civil rights movement and the civil rights leaders. But I did want to let people know who I'm associated with, that, as I lead or work, I'm always raising up, the strong Black nationalists, from Martin Delaney, Marcus Garvey, Queen Mother Moore. People forget that Queen Mother Moore was a nationalist, the first signer of the Declaration of Independence from the Republic of New Africa's Code of Umoja. And, and nationalists that go forward, one of the leaders, nationalist thinkers. I'm a son of his intellectually, and that's Dr. Amos Wilson. So I'm always lifting up those of us who follow the Black nationalist stream of thought. There's scholars that say there's been two streams of struggle, primarily in this country: the integration and assimilation stream and the Black nationalist separatist stream. And if you look at our leaders from 1619, from Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, Martin Delaney, as I named, all the way up to the present, you'll generally find that they fall within one or two of those streams. And so I've been consistently in the nationalist stream since I came into consciousness. And that's really what my story with Jesse Jackson comes in, who I honor in a tribute and testimony a couple of days ago when I heard about his death. When I was 26 years old, I had been accused of a false crime, a heinous crime, and found myself in the county jail. And I thought, after losing my father at 16, my father was a business owner, my mother and father were business owners. I thought, after losing my father at 16 and then my mother at 18, that I had suffered the worst that I would ever suffer in life. But I found myself at 26 years old being in the county jail, the Cook County jail, the largest county jail in America, and the most dangerous county jail in America, some would say. Others say Rikers Island, Gaddis Beat, but anyway, I found myself there without any family, being solo, and I went to a Christmas program. They would have these programs, I found out, that would get us off these decks and we could come to these assemblies. And so they had a Christmas program, and Jesse Jackson was there, and he was the one who organized those programs. And I came to find out later that he always brought with him 2 books. One of the books was a dictionary, and you know, if you've ever been locked up, one of the first things you do if you can't get out of jail is you start writing, you learn how to write. And you didn't want to be writing and couldn't spell words. So the first thing you did when you got some money is you borrowed the dictionary, you bought a dictionary of the commissary. So I bought a dictionary and probably a week earlier. And so when Jesse Jackson came, he had these 2 books he was giving out. The first one was, I saw was a dictionary, and I was like, damn, if I knew he was coming, I wouldn't have bought that dictionary. And so I was feeling kind of bad. And the other book was the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I was like, I don't even know who this dude is. But I took the book because, again, I had bought a dictionary and I didn't need a second one. And so I took the other book and got it back to, the deck and said, I'm going to read it. I knew I had heard of Malcolm X, but didn't know anything about Malcolm X. I knew he was a Black Muslim and was controversial. That's the only thing I knew about Malcolm X. I was a street dude after my parents died. I graduated high school when I was 16, was on a track toward, business education, come back and join the family business. But after the death of my parents, I turned toward the streets a little bit, not a little bit, but I turned toward the streets. And so I wasn't very knowledgeable about Blackness. And so when I put that book down, I stated in my testimony that I came aware of 2 things. And those 2 things radically changed my life. And one was that for the first time, I saw myself as a product of the oppression or the oppressive nature of white America for the first time. And I saw myself as a part of a collective, a people, of Black people, not just a Black person living in a Black community, but I saw myself as a representative of people for the first time in my life. And the second thing that I recognized, or that I learned, that had a profound effect on me was that, in Malcolm's life, we saw that we had within our spirit, all of us have within our spirit, the power to transform, power to become something radically different than what we were. I mean, radically different. If you look at Malcolm's life, his life was radically different. Coming out of prison and being exposed to the Nation of Islam than he was when he went in. So that you could radically change your life, and you can change it in a way that you were purposeful for your people, which that book showed me that it was even possible for any of us to do. And so it was that book that led me to reading and studying, because eventually I was convicted. When you're in the county jail, you're fighting your case. I was convicted of this crime, sentenced to 10 years in prison, 20 years in prison. I did 9 years, 9 months, because I got 3 months good time for going to school. But, I was, and I knew when I put that book down that I was going to spend my time the way Malcolm spent his, because my eyes were open. And it was from that I became Kamm. I named myself Kamal Koma Mansho into Tuzeli. And the initials, it's an acronym. The acronym is Kamm. That's why I spell my name with 2 M's. But it's actually 4 names. And it reveals, the person who I was who I had become, who I was striving to be for our community as a result of that experience and a result of being introduced to so much scholarship that passes through those walls while you're in prison, man. Those brothers be studying, man. You want a university, man, like Malcolm, like what he did in those libraries. These brothers be passing around books. I built my library actually in prison. I brought home about 4 boxes of books. I had a hustle in prison. I was a hairstylist before I went in prison and was a barber while I was there. And I used all my money to buy books. The currency were cigarettes, and I would get cartons of cigarettes every week by cutting brothers' hair. And I would trade that with brothers who smoked, and they would buy me books. So I had 3 or 4 boxes of books that I brought home with me in prison. And so, you know, I owe all of that to the gift that Jesse Jackson gave to me on that day, that assembly. Because had I not went to that assembly and had not Jesse Jackson been the man that he was, and that was something that he did annually. It wasn't just that particular year. I came to understand and find out that he did that year after year after year. Visit these brothers, visited us, you know, wasn't getting no visitors. And he came and, you know, with his I am somebody speech, but, you know, the gifts that he brought, that was a major gift to me, and it radically changed my life. And I'm here today, and all the work that I've done or tried to do purposefully, taking from the example of Malcolm X, is because of the life of Jesse Louis Jackson. So I lift him up in that way, even though, you know, like I said, I'm a Black nationalist. These are the integrationist camp. It's done tremendous things. And what I've come to find out more so now than when in my earlier nationalist career is that although these are two streams of struggle, two separate streams of struggle, they're not separate, although they're two streams of struggle with two separate ideologies, but they're not separate in what we produce. It is because of the nationalist demands that the civil rights leaders have been able to move the trajectory of rights, the issuance or the honoring of our rights that we share now, that we gained from the civil rights movement and from other movements. But if it wasn't from the nationalists' uncompromising stand, those things would not happen. And if it wasn't for those on the civil rights side, then there would have been no outlet for quote unquote liberal white America, or even conservative white America, who didn't want the alternative of straight out warfare. They wouldn't have had anything to push forward to deliver. So it's been a symbiotic relationship. And Jesse Jackson's life, as Lawrence Hamm just stated, you know, one of his famous speeches, you know, was Gary Convention. And I love, you know, what time is it? It's nation time. And I love the way the cadence in which he delivered that. And so that was a nationalist call. And so, you know, in understanding what Jesse Jackson's life did to me, and then understanding now as an elder in the movement, is that there's really no real separation between the two streams. There can't be. You know, we have to really understand that we must feed each other. Yeah. We must stay loyal and true to our ideology, but understanding it's got to be in a way that we're feeding each other for the greater benefit of the whole. So I'll stop with that.
Let me put a pin in part of what you said, because and as we get ready to wind up, one, of course, tomorrow is the anniversary of Malcolm's assassination. So I wanted to grab you right away and pull you into this for that, because we want to, you know, Malcolm's importance in centering all of this and being a beacon of the whole notion of the united front. Just a few days from now is the 60th anniversary of Dr. King meeting the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in Chicago, right? And in the conversation before y'all got on, Jonathan and I were talking, and we were talking about the parallel emergence of Jesse and the reemergence of a Minister Louis Farrakhan and the reemergence of the Nation of Islam under his leadership, right?
And those two were friends here in Chicago.
Right? And the way that came together during that time was important, very important in particular to that time, that we should have some basic takeaways from that. Now, it looks like we lost Junius, right? But in the last few minutes that we left, I want each of you to, he's coming back in, right? In the last minute we have left, I want
you say the last few minutes we have left. We get kind of overtime, so. I was like, you being Donna? Donna usually stretches us out. Like then there's Ed sometimes. And
see, Ed is not here. See, Ed let it go.
Right. Ed does it. Donna does it.
Right.
I believe No, Donna has learned, but it is February. So in February, we tend to.
Yeah, Ed let it go a little bit.
February, March, April, don't make that excuse.
No. This is a special time. I wanted each of you to, talk about what you think are the key takeaways from the Jesse Jackson legacy that we need to be pushing on to our youngins moving forward?
I'll jump in first because it speaks to, what he did for me is that, we have to go to the least of us. We want to build from the top down, and it's not going to happen. We got to build from the bottom up. We got to go to these brothers and sisters and not be blaming them because they have been exposed to 3 and 4 generations of community devastation and been raised in these devastated communities over the last several generations. And we got to find a way to reach them as the Nation of Islam reached the drug dealers, the heroin addicts, prostitutes, Jesse Jackson went to the county jail and produced Kamm Howard. So,
it's a great story, Kamm. It's a great story. Great story. Thank you for that.
Junius, what should we be doing today to carry on the memory of Jesse Jackson? Mr. Williams, I'm sorry.
And I did appreciate the spirit of brevity.
I hear that. Well, we've had the Jesse Jackson experience was one of going from protest to electoral politics, and we did that right here in Newark. That's the coalition that won Ken Gibson. We were the people who were involved and had the most energy and not necessarily the most skill starting out, but we had the temerity to go out and say we're going to elect the first black man. So the most recent example of that kind of politics is Mamdani over in New York. And as so many people have pointed out, Jesse was one of the first, if not the first in most recent history, electoral politics history, was to campaign among the least of us and to educate them and to motivate them. The question is, where do we go from here? That's what she asked me, really. We have not learned how to hold accountable the people we put in office to make sure they stay in touch with what they told us when we elected them. I consider myself to be amongst those people who feel very, very much in understanding about the power of electoral politics, but I'm also frustrated because we haven't figured out how to do that. I don't know if Jesse's a good example of that because he did not get us elected. He did not get elected, but carrying on with the people who have done that work and gotten elected, let's hope that Mamdani will be somebody who holds true to what he said.
Chairman? And you're muted. You're muted, sir.
I agree with both Kamm and Junius. I think one thing we have to do is not let the legacy of Jesse Jackson be forgotten. Just a few weeks ago, prior to Jesse's passing, Claudette Colvin passed away. We can't let her legacy be forgotten. I mean, I guess the broader context is there's a war on Black history right now. They're making war. They're trying to deconstruct, us and our history. So I think we have to fight for the preservation of Black history, and within that, Jesse's contribution and Claudette and all the martyrs' contributions. I think the other thing is the idea of this progressive agenda. I mean, I would challenge people to go back and look at the agenda that Jesse ran on in '88 and '84, and also to look at the agenda that came out of the National Black Political Convention in 1972. You will see a striking continuity in those agendas. And I think that's one of the things, if we engage in electoral politics, we got to have people who are running on a progressive agenda. Right now, I think Black politics is in great danger. We're in danger in losing our representation. And one of the reasons is because, unfortunately, and we don't have enough time to discuss it now, but it's worthy of debate. Historically, a lot of our elected officials didn't just align themselves with the Democratic Party, they aligned themselves with interests within the Democratic Party
Right.
that really kept them from advancing a progressive agenda. And look, I mean, why did Mamdani get elected? He got elected because he was running. He said the rent is too damn high. You know, the cost of living is too damn high. And now he's elected. Adams is out. You know, and now we're going to be in a situation where if Black elected officials continue to run on these neoliberal platforms, they're going to be defeated at the polls. And other people of color
are going to emerge.
will end up representing us. And I think that's an issue. I think where Black people are, there should be Black representation, you know, but it can't be neoliberal representation. They're not. The masses of our people are suffering. They are catching hell. They don't have no jobs. They out of college. They got these big ass student loans. They can't get jobs. You know, it's terrible out here. Those of us that may be living good, we're not feeling it, but the masses are feeling it, and you can't come to them with this, you know, 19. I mean, look, I hate to go on, but the sister that ran for lieutenant governor, she ran straight up on an Israeli agenda, a platform. Her campaign literature. Taisha Wade, a friend of Israel. When they had a debate, the moderator asked all of them, do you believe that Israel committed genocide? Only one person out of the 13, there were 13 candidates in the election, Anna-Lilia Mejia, raised her hand. You know, this is going to lead to the downfall of a lot of Black elected officials because they're getting that AIPAC money and they can't stand on truth.
That's right. Well, we talked about that earlier, Dimo, before you got on. Absolutely.
And this is definitely in line for future conversations that we're going to have.
With this panel right here, John, this is a good panel right here.
Right. Yeah, that's how you bring it on, Donna. That's how you do it. We're like, hey, let's have another whole half hour. So we'll definitely have all of our guests back on to further discuss this, because this is the last thing you brought up is really what we have to talk about much more extensively, and that you have Mamdani, who's much more in line with the convention in '72, the Jackson campaign, the progressive community, than we have many of the elected Black politicians like Adams who run for the billionaire class, and this is part of a part 2 conversation. So we will continue, and maybe even next week continue to have some of these conversations. So thank you so very much.
So please set some time aside for us.
Absolutely.
And as we close out, can y'all just give me one person that you listen to who inspires you musically? Just give me a name real quick. Chairman Hamm, give me one name.
Gil Scott Heron. The name
all right,
I always
Junius.
give you.
That's fine.
Junius, give me a name.
I had the pleasure of interviewing Redman today for yes, that's right, for my music video about Black music in Newark. And I was very impressed with that, brother. He motivated me.
The octogenarian.
All right.
That's right.
And
That's right. Redman.
Kamm,
my man.
Who you gonna rep from Chicago, Kamm?
Well, I would like to say Common, but you know, I'm an X-Clan. I'm an old school X-Clan, man.
Okay.
Whenever I listen to hip hop, it's got to be X-Clan.
Okay, well there you go. Well, God, please set some time aside for us because we're gonna try to start off our next week with you. Hopefully, go ahead, Jonathan. It's over in your hands.
All right, just saying thank you so much. Thank you for all of our guests to come on tonight. We appreciate the mayor, Baraka, for coming on at 6 o'clock. We also appreciate all of the other guests that we had on our show talking about Black history, the Palestinian struggle
Hamza.
in the United now, and our three esteemed panel guests right now. So thank you so much. We learned so much, and good night, and until next week. I stopped for a second because I was going to say the somber note of losing to that, but also the somber note of, and included in that, somebodiness, right? Everybody being included. When a man said he lost 200 family members in passing, and you know that, yes, it's related to the I am somebody and somebodiness and inclusiveness, and we realize that there's a disembodiment that's going on, where their somebodies are not, included at all. 200 family members and just passed over it because it was.
That's right.
That chills me. That's going to stay with me. That was on tonight.
Supposed to chill us.
Right. So thank you so much, and we are going to continue all these conversations into the next week. And thank you all for coming on, and Larry, thank you for coming and being on us so much. We appreciate you, and Junius, thank you for coming back on too. And Kamm, thank you for coming on. We got to get all of you back on more often.
And I got the name of the thing. It's going to be called "Getting Ready for the Midterms."
There you go.
Okay.
All right. So good luck and good night and peace.
Thank you.